voice can break the dark. A single spark ignites the heart. But if we turn when justice calls, the chains we forge will bind us all. When truth is silence, when lies take hold, the cost is freedom, the soul grows cold. No one stands tall while another must fall. Freedom for one depends on freedom for all. We're mavericks of freedom, rebels in the fight, defending every voice, defending every right. For the moment we falter, the moment we stall, we lose our own freedom when we let others fall. You can't stand free while others kneel. When justice fades, it's freedom they steal. An innocent condemned, a crime unspoken, and with it the bond of liberty is broken. No tyrant rules without our consent. Oppression thrives where silence is spent. Stand for the weak, the silence is small, or freedom will crumble for us all. We're mavericks of freedom, guardians of the light, fighting for the truth, for what is just and right. For the rights of one are the rights of all. We rise or we fall by answering the call. Even those we may oppose deserve the rights we all uphold. For if we deny them what is fair, we build our own prison in despair. The fight's not easy, it never will be, but justice for one is the key to be free. We stand as mavericks, together we strive, defending the rights that keep freedom alive. We're mavericks of freedom, rebels in the fight, upholding every truth, protecting every right. When one is oppressed, we're all in the thrall. Freedom for one depends on freedom for all. So take a stand, let your courage rise. Defend the truth, don't compromise. For the soul of the world, the writing's on the wall. Freedom for one depends on freedom for all.
Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have a new Liberal leader and Prime Minister, Mark Carney, and we're going to go live there, but I want to start with this first of all tonight. Here's how it looked just moments ago as the coronation took place. Let's let it roll.
In first place, the next Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, with 131,674 votes, resulting in 29,457 allocated points, representing 85.9% of the vote.
So that was that, and we're going to go live to his acceptance speech in just a moment, and we're also going to be joined by the guys from OurPrinciples.ca. Tonight, you guys get to join the conversation live. It's going to be a call-in program, and you can join to not only comment on the Liberal leadership, but also to ask questions of the guys from OurPrinciples.ca, talking about restoring and protecting our rights as Canadians. So stay with me. We'll be right back on the other side of this. And here's the number to call to join the broadcast tonight. Okay, Mavericks, it's call-in time. Join the conversation. Call 1-647-734-4220. Then enter the PIN number 860-075-764, followed by the pound sign. Exercise your right to free speech. Call 1-647-734-4220. Then enter the PIN number 860-075-764, followed by the pound sign. Call 1-647-734-4220. Then enter the PIN number 860-075-764, followed by the pound sign. Maverick News. Call now. The world is watching and listening to you.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals. Defenders of individual rights and freedoms. Credible. Trusted. Grounded in reality. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, I'm back, and what day is it today? It's Sunday, March 9th, 2025, and big news out of Ottawa tonight. Mark Carney, yes, the former Bank of Canada and Bank of England governor, has just clinched the leadership of the Liberal Party of Canada in a landslide victory. No big surprise to most people. Carney swept the race with 85% of the vote on the first ballot. Holy smokes. Sounds like an election that Putin would have, leaving his competitors, including former finance minister Chrystia Freeland, Karina Gould, and Frank Baylis, in the dust. With over 131,000 votes cast, it's clear the Liberal faithful were ready for a fresh face, sort of. And just like that, Carney steps into the spotlight as Canada's new Prime Minister designate. Set to take the reins from Justin Trudeau, who announced his resignation back in January after nearly a decade in power. Now, if you're wondering who this guy is, well, Mark Carney's no political newbie, even though he said he's an outsider, despite never holding elected office. He is a heavy hitter in the world of finance, credited with steering Canada through the 2008 financial crisis and later guiding the UK economy through the chaos of Brexit. Although on the other side, people would say he destroyed the economy, so you can assess for yourself. He's pitched himself as the outsider, as I said, with the know-how to tackle Canada's big challenges like the economy, housing, and the big tariff war with the United States, and how to deal with El Presidente Donald Trump. And the 51st state issue, too, I guess, is rolled into that. So Carney's already promised to build the fastest growing economy on the G7. And with Parliament set to resume in just over 2 weeks, he's got no time to waste. So we'll see how this goes. The Conservatives have already, well, they went into overdrive with campaign ads really targeting Carney in a really heavy duty way. So he gets to be the next Liberal leader that we all are going to love to hate. Let's bring in our guest for tonight. One of them anyway. Jack McClellan is back. Hello, sir, from OurPrinciples.ca.
Hello, Rick. My sidekicks, they're not on yet. They're not on in the waiting room, are they?
No, I'm not seeing them here yet, so I hope they're not having technical problems, but they'll show up, I think, in due course. And of course, people can join the conversation tonight by calling in, and I'll put that number up on the screen here. But while I do that, let's go to this speech. We're going to pick it up here. I've got it paused, but this is Mark Carney's acceptance speech, and we will no doubt be commenting on this through the evening tonight as well. But Jack is really here to talk about OurPrinciples.ca and our rights, which, were pretty heavily under assault during the pandemic by the Liberal Party and really all the parties that were in power at the time. But here's Mark Carney tonight.
And you inspired me. You inspired me over the years. And now to have an opportunity to continue your tradition of fiscal responsibility, social justice, and international leadership. Prime Minister Trudeau, my time doesn't permit me to recognize all your accomplishments, so I'll speak at a higher level. You have combined strength and compassion every day as a fighter for Canada. You have led us through some of the hardest challenges that this nation has ever faced.
At the same time, you have transformed Canada. You've transformed it. You've lifted hundreds of thousands of kids out of poverty by moving reconciliation forward and by defending freedom and democracy here and across the world. Prime Minister, I think I am speaking for everyone here when I thank you for your hard work. As Ella Grace said, your hard work, for your leadership, and for your service to our great country. And I'd also like to thank you, Liberals, for having awarded me the greatest honor possible, which is to serve as your new leader. Thank you.
Merci.
I'd like to thank the tens of thousands of volunteers across the country who have devoted themselves to rebuilding our country and to giving back hope to our country.
I pledge to you and to all Canadians that I will follow their example. I will work day and night with one purpose, which is to build a stronger Canada for everyone. But I will need help. I will need a lot of help. And so I'd like to thank Chrystia, Frank, and Karina for your energy and ideas and leadership that you have brought to this campaign. And I would like also to thank those ministers who remained in their posts to serve Canada directly during this time of great peril. And the incredible group of Liberal MPs that we have. You are the voices for your communities, and you are the conscience of our party. Thank you for your service. Now, to give a sense of that service, I'm going to quote from a message that I and Chrystia and Karina and Frank, the four of us, received from someone called Bob Zettel. Now, Bob, full disclosure, I know the leader of the opposition's into full disclosure, so I'm going to full disclosure. Full disclosure. Just want to get this on the table. Bob goes to my church. Actually, I go to Bob's church because he goes there a lot more frequently than I do. Anyways, point is, Bob wrote to the 4 candidates, and he said, I quote, "Right now, everyone sees the main threat as the Trump tariffs. But the far greater challenge will be, as it always has been, to foster unity and a sense of the common good. There are those who will seek power by dividing us." We'll get to that later on. "And we being the people of Canada, we need you, my fellow candidates, myself, to continue in positions of leadership to promote a united Canada, a commitment to common good and the respect and the rule of law throughout the world." See, I quote Bob because right now all Canadians are being asked to serve in their own ways. We're all being called to stand up for each other and for the Canadian way of life. So let me ask you, who's ready? Pierre Claire. Who's ready to stand up for Canada with me? 100%. Yes. Yes. Yes, Canada. Yes, Canada. The Liberal Party is united and strong and ready to fight to build an even better country. Now, I feel like everything in my life has helped prepare me for this moment. 2 months ago, I put up my hand to run for leader because I felt we needed big changes, but big changes guided by strong Canadian values. The values I learned at the dinner table from my parents, Bob and Verly, and my 3 siblings, Brenda, Sean, and Brian. Values that I learned at the hockey rinks of Edmonton from my coaches, such as Stormin Norman Lee. He exists. We didn't call him that to his face, by the way, but that was his. My parents were teachers, and they stressed the importance of hard work, of community, and of tolerance. My coaches were dedicated volunteers who taught me the importance of teamwork, ambition, and because it's Canada, humility. Des bonnes valeurs.
The right values, Canadian values. I took them with me to university, and I kept them close to me when I was called upon to manage crises here in Canada and across the world. These same values have guided me in my work to build strong economies. And today, I will use those values again as we face this most serious crisis in a generation.
Know that new threats demand new ideas and a new plan. They know that new challenges demand new leadership. Canadians want positive leadership that will end division and help us build together. And to respond, my government will put into action our plan to build a stronger economy, to create new trading relationships with reliable trading partners, and to secure our borders. Put clair.
Now, to be clear here, this will require change, big change. But I know that Canadians are ready. They've told me so across the country. People want change because they're concerned. They're concerned about the cost of living and the housing crisis as well. They're worried for the future of their young, their kids. They're worried about the future of Canada in the face of President Trump's threats and a more divided and dangerous world.
Now, I am a pragmatist above all. So when I see that something's that's not working, I will change it. So my government will immediately eliminate the divisive consumer carbon tax on families and farmers and small and medium-sized businesses. And we will stop the hike in the capital gains tax because we think builders should be incentivized for taking risks and rewarded when they succeed. Canada needs more of this type of change. Change that puts more money in people's pockets. Change that makes our companies more competitive. Change that builds the strongest economy in the G7. Now, there's someone who's trying to do the opposite. There's someone who's trying to weaken our economy. Donald Trump. And Donald Trump, as we know, has put, as the Prime Minister just said, unjustified tariffs on what we build, on what we sell, on how we make a living. He's attacking Canadian families, workers, and businesses, and we cannot let him succeed. And we won't. We won't. I am proud of the response of Canadians who are making their voices heard and their wallets felt. I am grateful for how our provinces are stepping up to the fight, because when we are united, we are Canada strong. The Canadian government has rightly retaliated and is rightly retaliating with our own tariffs that will have maximum impact in the United States and minimum impact here in Canada. And my government will keep our tariffs on until the Americans show us respect. And until they can join us in making credible and reliable commitments to free and fair trade, as Chrystia did. Yeah. And in the meantime, we will ensure that all the proceeds from our tariffs will be used to protect our workers.
Now the Americans, they want our resources, our water, our land, our country even. Never. Think about that for a moment. That will destroy our way of life.
Want our resources, our water, our land, our country. Think about it. If they succeeded, they would destroy our way of life. In America, healthcare is a big business. In Canada, it is a right. America is a melting pot. Canada is a mosaic. Aux États-Unis,
in the US, differences are not respected or recognized. First Nations aren't recognized. And the French language would never have any rights. The joie de vivre culture and the French language are part of our identity. And we must protect that. We must promote that as well. We'll never give them up for any trade agreement.
No. Look, Canada, America is not Canada. And Canada never, ever will be part of America in any way, shape, or form. Look, we didn't ask for this fight. We didn't ask for this fight. But Canadians are always ready when someone else drops the gloves. So the Americans, they should make no mistake, in trade as in hockey, Canada will win. Aux Américains.
Now, to Americans, I say to you, as in hockey, we will win.
Mais cette victoire.
But that victory won't be easy. We're facing the greatest crisis of our lifetimes. We have to do extraordinary things, and together. We have to build things that we've never imagined we would have to do at a pace we would have never believed possible. And above all, we must place people above money. We have to unite to build the strongest, the fairest, and the freest country in the world.
Now, Donald Trump is trying to weaken our economy. But there's someone else who, if he succeeds, will weaken our economy. It's Pierre Poilievre. Pierre Poilievre just doesn't get it. He is the type of lifelong politician, and I've seen this type around the world, a lifelong politician who worships at the altar of the free market despite never having made a payroll himself. And now, in the face of President Trump's threats, Pierre Poilievre still refuses to get his security clearance. At a time when our national security is under threat as it has never been before. At a time of immense economic insecurity, he would undermine the Bank of Canada. Monsieur Poilievre
has called for the shutting down of CBC at a time when disinformation and foreign interference are on the march. He insults our mayors and ignores the First Nations when it's time to build. He intends to put an end to international aid when democracy and human rights are in danger across the world. And he will also allow our planet to burn.
Poilievre would let our planet burn. This is not leadership. It's ideology. It's ideology that betrays what we as Canadians value, each other. It's an ideology that also represents a fundamental misunderstanding of how the economy works. Now, unlike Pierre Poilievre, I've actually worked in the private sector. I know how the world works, and I know how it can be made to work better for all of us. And that knowledge is especially useful now in the service of Canadians when we must build a new economy and create new trading relationships. Let me tell you something else that we know that Pierre Poilievre doesn't. We know that markets don't have values, people do. And we know as Liberals that it's our job to make markets, to make the economy work for all Canadians. These are the most powerful tool we've ever invented. They can find solutions to our greatest problems. And when the private sector, when the markets are governed well, they deliver great jobs and stronger growth faster than anything. But markets are also indifferent to human suffering, and they are blind to our greatest needs. So when they're not governed well, or not at all, they will deliver enormous wealth for the lucky few and hard times for the rest. And in this crisis, we must help those who are hit hardest by the American tariffs while we build our strength here at home. That's the right thing to do. That's the fair thing to do. That is the Canadian thing to do. That is what makes us strong. So Donald Trump thinks he can weaken us with his plan to divide and conquer. Pierre Poilievre's plan will leave us divided and ready to be conquered. Because a person who worships at the altar of Donald Trump will kneel before him, not stand up to him. Pierre Poilievre's slogans are not solutions. His anger is in action. His division is in strength. Division won't win a trade war. Division won't pay the rent or the mortgage. Division won't bring down the price of groceries. Division won't make Canada strong. Voilà où mène la...
This is where negative politics and division and anger takes us. Half of the US fears the other half. They're wary of each other. We can't allow such a situation to occur here in Canada. The Americans are increasingly divided, and this will weaken them. And we will win this fight if we are united and strong. Yes. We might disagree over policy. We might disagree over hockey. You can support the Oilers in Ottawa. That's possible. It's a free country after all. But when it comes to Canada, we're all on the same side. Let's choose to be strong. Canada strong.
Now, I've learned a few things from long experience in crises. And the first is that plan beats no plan. And you need to distinguish what you can change from what you can't. We can't change Donald Trump. Can't change him. Nous devons comprendre ce que...
But we have to understand what we can and we must change. We are masters in our own house.
And we can. And because we're masters in our own home, we can control our economic destiny with a plan that puts more money in your pockets. A plan that will ensure your government spends less so Canada can invest more. A plan that builds millions of homes. A plan that makes us an energy superpower in both clean and conventional energy. A plan that creates new trade corridors with reliable partners. A plan that creates one Canadian economy, not 13. Because in Canada, we are stronger when we're united. We can give ourselves far, far more than Donald Trump can ever take away. But it will take extraordinary efforts. It won't be business as usual. We will have to do things we haven't imagined before at speeds we didn't think possible. We will do it. We will do it for the common good so that everyone benefits. You know, I do care about the economy. But it's not because I'm an economist. It's because I care about people. That's why I'm a Liberal. That's why we are Liberals. On sait.
It's clear that the value of a strong economy starts with the workers who have good, well-paying jobs today and who have better futures for them and for today's youth. We know as Liberals that we can't redistribute what we don't have. We also know that we can't be strong abroad if we're weak at home. We also know that we cannot build a better future if we're unable to manage the present.
So, we need a strong economy, but when we're fighting for a strong economy, we're fighting for good Canadian health care for everyone. We are fighting for strong support for our seniors who built this country. We are fighting for child care for young families that they put in place. We are fighting for dental care and pharma care for everyone who needs it. We are fighting for rights. We are fighting for a strong economy so we can create a more sustainable world for our children and grandchildren, and we will deliver. Well, good. I know that these are dark days. Dark days brought on by a country we can no longer trust. We are getting over the shock, but let us never forget the lessons. We have to look after ourselves, and we have to look out for each other. We need to pull together in the tough days ahead. And so, to those families watching this evening in Fort Smith, in Edmonton, and across every community in Canada, I promise you this. Together, we can and we will get through this crisis. We can and we will come out stronger than ever. And we will, because Canada is built on the strength of its people. From our mines to our ports, From our logging roads to our city streets, we're strongest when we're united, when we're one economy, not 13, when we can cheer for different teams and still be on one team when it counts. When we come together, we build things that last because we are Canada strong. Vive la Canada! Merci tout le monde.
So that song they're playing there, I think that's going to be his campaign tune. But I'm not going to play it because I'll get a copyright strike. And we don't need to because we have our guests for the evening here, all three of them. Let's just bring this presentation from the Liberal Convention at the Rogers Centre in Ottawa to a close here. Let me pull this off. I need to, well, here, let's just do this. Bam, gone. How's that? Now everybody feels better. Welcome, gentlemen.
Good to be here, Rick.
John, Jack,
Charles.
and Charles, great to have you guys here again. I'm going to go around the horn and get you guys to introduce yourselves again. Our three guests are with OurPrinciples.ca. Tonight we'll be talking about, obviously, the Liberal leadership result and Mark Carney becoming our Prime Minister designate. And you guys can call in on the number, using the number on the bottom of the screen to join the conversation, to interact with these guys. We promised we'd bring them back so they could do this Q&A. And here's your chance to interact with them directly. 1-647-734-4220. And then just punch in that PIN number that you see on the bottom of the screen, 860-075-764, followed by the pound sign. And let's start with Jack and begin the introductions.
Well, I'm a former long-distance truck driver, mostly eastern seaboard, mid-U.S., some western Canada, but mostly mid-U.S. And I have been a hypnotist or master of the power, what we call the power of suggestion, for over 50 years. So what that basically says that I study what people say and do, basically, and the power of suggestion and what they do. Billboards, radio, television, which I haven't watched TV or radio in 15 years because of the incredible level of suggestion that's on there. And like I wouldn't say I was losing hope, but I was getting discouraged in what was going on in this country until I learned of the principles, which were put together by Charles. And when I read them, it gave me the hope that, hey, we can change things. I was involved in the convoy of 1990. I was their spokesman when we blocked the borders between Canada and the U.S., and I was involved in the convoy in 2022 in Ottawa when we saw exactly what this Liberal government would do if you go up against them, right? They release the bureaucracy on you. And there's still people with their bank accounts frozen, and so my hope is in the principles, and we'll use them tonight to hopefully the callers can call in and give us suggestions on the best way to share these principles across every dinner table in this country, and get people made aware of what the criteria should be that leaders or people who want to be our leaders should meet before we cast our vote for them.
And just to let people know, give them kind of a frame of reference here. Did I bring that up over here? No, I need to bring it up over here. We'll show people the website. Right there. OurPrinciples.ca. And this is what we're talking about here, in addition to the Liberal leadership result. And I guess this is about the restoration and preservation of our rights as Canadians. And Charles, do you want to introduce yourself?
You're muted, Charles.
Yeah, can't hear you, Charles.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was trying to keep my sniffles down.
Ah,
Coughing. But I'm a former public servant who was involved in policy and program development. I've helped develop programs and policies that cost a lot of money to taxpayers, a few billions of dollars. Some of them, the more modest ones, had some positive effects. I guess they all had some positive effects, but you learn a great deal about what goes wrong with government expenditures when you're involved. I left government at a relatively young age, having made a comment to my boss. I'm 42, I've got lots of years left to contribute, I've got no years left to waste. And since then, I've been essentially reading and writing about the principles upon which Western societies developed, going back to ancient Sumer and looking at the principles that kept being articulated again and again and again, and just then fought against by abusive leaders. Those principles being the principles that allow people to be free, to treat each other with mutual respect, and to find a way that people can live together well. Been fortunate in that I've met quite a number of very good people in the last number of years as, well, I should say that I wrote a book, which I never tried to get published, called Lost Principles of Our Civil Heritage, that looked through the history of the West and looked at these recurring principles, and then was really fortunate to run into a number of people who were interested in trying to find a way to articulate those and to get them more widely discussed in our society, so that we can begin to reclaim our government, so it becomes a government of the people. And John and Jack are two of the people with whom I have worked very delightfully in clarifying and getting those principles written more clearly as a basis for encouraging people to talk about them, to understand them, and to press to have our governments live by them and respect them.
okay. And John, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Rick. It's always a pleasure to be back. Let me start this way. I'm a son of an immigrant that came to Canada, who gave up his life back in the old country. I grew up in the Holland Marsh area, a little town called Bradford. Very diversified culture. There was tons of different nationalities and cultures. So I learned a valuable lesson. We should all be treated equally because we all live together and work together. But through my career, I went to school, college. I started my, let's say, business life at 12 as a paper route, delivering newspapers. From there, it was all uphill from that area. But I came to middle management, senior management. I traveled the world. I was responsible for a lot of people's payrolls as one of the leading salespeople in a very big company, billion-dollar company. If I didn't produce, the company didn't last. And it was one of those things. So you learn valuable lessons along the way. And I was very fortunate to have traveled where I went to, whether it was a democratic country, a socialist country, or a communist country. I've been around the world many times. But what I really was inspired when I met these other two guys, Jack and Charles. And one of the things I saw around the world was how policy dictates everyone's movements, how things change. I had a Russian professor from Dalhousie University. When I said to him, what's going on in Crimea with the Ukraine thing? And he said, well, it's all propaganda. And I said, well, I'm glad we don't have propaganda here. I said to him, Rick, and he said to me, you have marketing. That's what they call it here. And I stepped back and I thought about that, and he's absolutely right. So, when I met Charles and Jack, we didn't talk about policies. The principles are all about principles. They're about integrity. They're about honesty, the values that what people are all about. And that's why I've really enjoyed working with those two guys, and it's a pleasure to be on your show, Rick.
Okay. Before we get to our first caller, just give me a very brief reaction to what we just witnessed with this acceptance speech from Mark Carney tonight.
Well, you have to remember, we are nonpartisan as part of our principles. So any opinion we make is, like, my opinion is personal. Okay, but our principles is nonpartisan. We don't support any one party, but we wholly support any candidate or person in power who lives by the principles. We support them 100%, no matter what party they belong to. Having been in motivational speaking for 20-some years, he's the most unmotivating speaker I've ever heard. Like, I had trouble not closing my eyes listening to him. But he did say one thing interesting. Correct me if I'm wrong. Did he say he was going to stop carbon tax, drop the carbon tax, or something?
That's what he said.
And Trudeau, his supposedly would be his, whatever you call him, whatever you will, is sitting in the front aisle clapping and nodding his head up and down like a pigeon on a telephone wire, which is really weird, which is an oxymoron, right? Sorry about the moron comment, but that's, you know, and blaming Donald Trump. That's we're like a mosquito on Elvin's backside to the United States. Seriously, they don't need us in any way, shape, or form. And for us to imagine that they do, we're fools. And so what they've done is they've taken lousy leadership on the part of the Liberals, coupled with the NDP. They've taken incredibly lousy leadership, unethical leadership, and now they've taken it and they want you to look over here at Donald Trump and say everything's his fault.
It is. I disagree with you, but
no, you
continue.
can. But I mean,
continue.
I can show you a list of ethical violations that Mr. Trudeau did, and I really enjoy Grok 3, which is the AI that X created, and I asked it, and it said it's got an 85 to 90% chance of Pierre Poilievre winning the next election. So. Put Mark Carney, in my opinion, into the leadership of the Liberal Party is like changing the leadership of MS-13. Doesn't change anything. It's not going to change the result.
Yeah. What about you, John?
Well, I think the Liberals have always been very successful at putting up a great show, great fireworks, great pictures. They do no wrong. All the wonderful things. Yes. Carney did say he's going to get rid of the carbon tax to families, to small business, but I also heard he's going to put it on corporations, people who make things in the background. So those expenses will be just passed on. So is he really telling the truth? Is he really giving us the right impression? I've heard this story from the Liberals over and over again. If he was really upfront, he would have been a Liberal a long time ago. But he picked the right moment. He was in the background for 5 years telling Trudeau, hey, I'm advising you, do this, do that. And the same thing with Freeland. So at the end of the day, he wants to make a lot of changes. He wants to do this and that, but he is the part of the team that has to get changed. That's how I look at it.
Actually, you know what it reminds me of is the election that where the Liberals defeated Joe Clark. And the issue then was a gas tax. That's what the government was defeated on. That triggered a confidence vote, triggered the election. The Liberals were up in arms because the Conservatives were going to add so many cents per liter at the time. It was a long time ago, so I don't remember exactly how much. They were staunchly opposed to it. They defeated the budget. They brought the government down. The Liberals were elected, I believe, with a majority, defeating the Joe Clark minority government. And as soon as they got into power, they brought in a gasoline tax that was even bigger than the one they were opposed to. I guess they were just upset that it wasn't big enough at the time. But anyway, Charles, over to you, sir.
What we heard was really political advertising, and it was at a very high level. And perhaps one has to look a little more deeply at some of the things that are said. I will comment, first of all, on the carbon pricing. The carbon tax, the elimination of the carbon tax. Mr. Carney, running his campaign, has said that he will replace it with something that's more effective, being carbon pricing. And he has said as well that he would put an import tariff on goods from any country that does not have carbon pricing. Now, the interesting problem with that is that means everything we buy from other countries that don't have carbon pricing, and very few do now. We're one of the few that remains that has a carbon price, and ours is per capita the highest of any country in the world. That when you start to put the carbon pricing on, it means everything we buy that comes from other countries, including everything that our manufacturers buy to make the products that are made here, becomes more expensive. So he also talked today. He mentioned the need to redistribute, and he talked about redistributing during his campaign as well. And he emphasized all the Canadian programs we have, the healthcare, the daycare, and so on, that we're going to protect. All of those programs, redistributing and providing those services, those are government activities. They are not generating wealth. And if I can just observe, I mentioned at the top that I was a public servant. I break GDP down into two parts. There's the part of GDP that generates wealth, and there's the part that consumes wealth. As a public servant, I was in the part that consumed wealth. Everything that I was given as salary had to be taken from people who were generating wealth in the country. And what I heard in Mr. Carney's comments was a lot of nice general, let me say, advertising, marketing. What one might go farther and say what John talked about in other countries, propaganda. But at the level of detail, it's not getting to how do you actually build a strong economy? How do you generate that wealth? How do you build that wealth generating part of the economy that's essential to fund the public service part and the provision of services that we expect to be given to the public? So he enters into a time when we've got 10 years of a past Liberal government that actually, he talks about Pierre Poilievre being divisive, but the Liberal government was one of the most divisive governments we have ever seen. In fact, at the time of the pandemic and the convoy, 2 days, I think, before the Emergencies Act was put in place, a Liberal MP, Joel Lightbound, gave a press conference, well prepared. He came and he read his statement in French. He read it in English. It was not off the cuff. And then he answered questions. And in his prepared statement at a certain point, he said, we've got to stop the division. These people came here to talk, but we, the Liberals, have not been willing to listen. What we have done, we ran our election campaign during the pandemic based on a policy of a strategy to implement our policies on COVID. And those policies were intended, and these are his words, to wedge, to divide, and to stigmatize. Now, the cabinet will be much the same. The members will be much the same. The underpinnings will be much the same. So what we hear is still a lot of talk about a lot of government expenditure, redistributing money, government programs, tariffs, shifting away from carbon tax, where there's theoretically a rebate, to something that's a carbon pricing where there'll be no rebate. So we're going to see more problems, but government is willing to be there to redistribute, but it's not clear how government is going to allow the country to generate the wealth that needs to be redistributed.
Yeah, excellent points on the carbon pricing. People have asked me about Carney canceling the carbon tax, and I said, yeah, maybe he will, but they'll just bring the tax in a different way and call it something else. That's what politicians do. So who's our first caller? Who joined us on the line?
Hey, Rick, it's Laurie from Eastern Ontario. How you doing tonight?
I am just fine, sir. Welcome to the program.
Rick, the first question I got for you here tonight is, how could you find such a left-leaning panel?
I searched far and wide, and the progressive liberals are very hard to find these days. But I managed to dig up these old guys to join our fossil club, me included.
As you will know,
Yeah.
left-leaning people are absolutely principled, and that's why we approach it from the point of
Sure.
principle.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, your buddy Jack up in the corner of the screen, he disqualified his opinion as soon as he said the word convoy, and I
Okay.
go with convoy. So we can start there.
Okay.
But the question I was going to ask, if we had a legitimate panel here tonight, was who would you want to see go up against Donald Trump to negotiate these tariffs? And that's what this next Canadian election is going to come down to.
Yeah.
Is it Mark Carney or is it Pierre Poilievre?
Right.
And I'll just sign off on that, Rick, and you can
Well,
throw
don't
it out
sign
to the
off
boys
because I
there.
love having you here, and we need the balance. You can ask a second question. I give you permission. Challenge these
The
guys, hold their
balance,
feet to the
yeah, the
fire.
balance, yeah.
But let's start with Jack and try to keep your answers clear and concise, because we got to go around the horn every time, and you know I'll stay here till 2 o'clock in the morning if you want, or as long as you want. But Jack, go ahead and respond to Lori. If you haven't noticed, he's a very strong, far right, extreme conservative. So, but he's a good friend and a friend of the show, and he provides some good points too. So over to you, Jack.
No, but I'll go right back out on the limb there. As soon as you support people that infringe on the rights of other people,
yes, yeah,
in your message of protesting,
yeah,
you have lost all your credibility as far as I'm concerned, and that's what happened with the convoy.
there were many layers to it, and many things were true.
I have
all
no
at the same
problem
time.
with protesting. That's fine. That was out there. You send your message, and then you go home, and you respect the rights of other people in the process. I'll leave it at that.
I understand. Jack, do you want to respond?
I'm not going to get into defending the convoy. It's passed. But anyway, it's the Canadian. What came out of the convoy, I wasn't necessarily in favor of parking trucks in Ottawa because we did it in 1990.
Sounds like you're backing up the truck, Jack.
Okay.
Well,
so what the convoy did was that when you saw the Canadians lining the bridges, lining the side of the roads, walking in Wellington Street with tears frozen to their face.
And I was also lining the bridges of the 401 when I saw Canadian bodies going down the highway coming out of Afghanistan because we were supporting our American friends.
I have a Harley Davidson. I rode in those convoys, in those what would you call them? We call them heroes ride. That's on my bike. It's a hero sticker because that's what we rode as, and that was silly to a point because we drove in the 401. People never had really a chance to do much. I mean, we were underneath. We were doing 80 miles an hour at some point. I think they should have gone up Highway 2 through Port Hope and Kingston and Coburg and Whitby and Oshawa.
That's great. Let's get to my question. Who we're going to have go head to head? That's an election question as far as I'm concerned here.
I didn't take it on the sidebar, but anyway, Danielle Smith, I think, has had the right attitude dealing with Trump's tariffs. And those who listened to the tariffs originally, Trump only wanted people to take control of the border and to stop the fentanyl and the illegal movement across the border. There was just a RCMP CSIS committee that released. There's over 4,000 criminal organizations in Canada.
We've heard that one before.
All 4,000 use fentanyl as their main income generator. So fentanyl is a serious problem in Canada and the U.S. And so the only one I've heard rationally speak about what to deal with that is Danielle Smith out of Alberta. She's got common sense to me.
The question really, though, Jack,
she'll be the first one to leave Team Canada, too. Mark my words.
So go ahead, Rick. What is that? The question is, you mean between Poilievre
the question was, Jack, was who would you pick if you were a Canadian to go up against Trump, to negotiate with Trump on these tariffs? Is it Pierre Poilievre or is it Mark Carney?
Neither.
Neither one.
That's the question.
Neither one of them. I would ask Danielle Smith.
If I can jump in just to give another perspective, I've been involved with not billion-dollar contracts, but million-dollar contracts, and I've worked for some fairly large international corporations. And one of the things that we used to do, or maybe they still do it, the person who goes in is the person who understands what they're talking about, understands both pros and cons, understands what's on top of the table and what's underneath the table in making whatever deal possible. You're going up against a guy by the name of Trump, who is a wheeler dealer. He may not be the smartest guy in this shit, but he's smart and he's good at what he does. So in my thinking is, we would never send in the president of the company to negotiate for the company. We would send in people who were negotiators, who understand how to negotiate, who understand how to ensure that the back door is left open if we have to make an exit, or how we benefit and how we can give and take. Because if you don't know what Trump's weaknesses are, you can't negotiate. If you don't understand what their philosophy is, you can't negotiate. So before you even see the man or his office, you need to be well prepared. And what we're doing is we're sending people down to Washington who are not prepared. This is not their kind of business. This is not what they do. And we need to send people who are negotiators, people who understand how to wheel and deal. Who would be that right person be? There's got to be someone. Maybe Charles used to be in the bureau, the bureaucrat office. Maybe there's a guy who could probably work on our behalf. But we need to send someone who understands how to negotiate. I don't think right now, I like Danielle Smith very much. I think she's wonderful. But I don't think we're sending the right people, nor do I think Doug Ford is the right person.
That's for sure.
So that's my two cents. And I like your question, by the way. It's direct, it's straight, it's easy to understand. And those are the type of things that we need to talk about, not policy decisions, but principles. Are we working with people who have principles in Washington, or are we working with their policies, what they want? So we have to understand that. And that's going back to making sure we understand the background before we actually make contact.
Charles?
So,
your question is a really good question, and I don't have a clear answer. But what I would say is that Trump has shown himself, as he's proceeded, to be neither open nor transparent nor consistent. And so it's hard to know what he is trying to achieve. And we can speculate on all sorts of outcomes that he's looking for, ranging from the simple, we're going to stop the fentanyl flow, to a much more complex set of outcomes that really look potentially at actually taking over the Canadian territory. And we see discussion along both lines. But what I would say is, and to come back to the suggestion that Jack started about Danielle Smith, I think what she did was actually really interesting, because she went down and in her discussion, she started to say, let us talk. And she tried to talk to get an understanding of what Trump was really looking for. And perhaps she got some clarity, perhaps she did not, because maybe he wasn't as open as he should have been. But she tried to talk with him, and her position now has really firmed up, as has Pierre Poilievre's, incidentally. He has been very clear, Canada first. That's where we are. We will never cede the country. But I will go back to a previous thing, which goes back to when Trump was president last time and NAFTA was renegotiated, and it's variously now called still NAFTA or USMCA, and somebody CUSMA from the Canadian side. But what was interesting is, as she was involved in negotiations, she went into those negotiations with absolutely ridiculous positions. She was saying that in every industry, 50% of the people have to be women. Every industry. She went in and said that every industry has to meet some carbon limits. And Trump wasn't prepared to go there. But worse than that, she went and spoke twice at conferences that were attacking Trump. One of those conferences called Trump the Tyrant. Now, I think when you're in the midst of a negotiation, it's not a very good idea to actually go down and participate by bringing ridiculous demands that you're not flexible on, or by going and smearing the other party. The result, of course, was that the U.S. wouldn't talk to her, wouldn't respond to her phone calls, and eventually completed the agreement with Mexico, and then said to Trudeau, if you want in, you come and sign it. We're not changing it. This is the way it is. Take it or leave it. And we took it. So dealing with Trump, I don't think it's a good idea, or with anyone, to go in there with a really hard line. Now, let me say an insulting line, an ad hominem kind of attack. And what I worry about with Carney is his attacks have been ad hominem. He's been attacking Trump personally. Instead of saying, here are the benefits, here are the joint, the room for joint profit benefit by collaborating, which is the Danielle Smith line, and it's consistent with what Poilievre has been saying as well. Now, how Poilievre will follow through, I don't know. But very clearly, as I look at it, I would say the room for finding a path in dealing with someone who is unpredictable, not clear, and changes his position, it seems, from time to time, well, as you go along, and his position, you might think you've got an agreement on this, but then it's something else. I think it's better not to get involved in statements that the U.S. is no longer a friend, the U.S. is no longer an ally, it's just a neighbor. And which is both in words and in tone what Mark Carney has said. And I think that takes us in the direction that Chrystia Freeland was going in the previous NAFTA USMCA discussions. And I don't think that's constructive. We've got a huge job to deal with here. We've got to find a way to rebuild our economy. I agree, we have to find, with Carney's comments, that we have to find a way to have a constructive path forward. We've got to rebuild our economy. We've got to change our economy. But to change our economy, because he did throw in the words again tonight, talking about a sustainable economy, implying it's going to have to be one of these carbon fixed economies, when everybody else has shifted away from that in their national policies, it doesn't make an awful lot of sense, it seems to me, to say we will not produce any carbon, but any carbon produced product will allow to be made in China. I mean, that doesn't change anything on the global perspective. And so I at this point would say, looking in balance, I don't know what Poilievre will do, but I don't think he's put the obstacles in the way of a meaningful discussion that Carney has by positions he's taken.
And Lori, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I'll just make one more comment there. As far as I'm concerned, and maybe the negotiations won't look anywhere close to what they did the last time around, but I think that Chrystia Freeland probably led the charge the last time around and did a whale of a job. She's certainly under Trump's skins, which may not or may not be a good thing.
I want her to go just because she's going to irritate the living daylights out of him. So,
well,
yeah,
maybe we'll find her a job in the next Liberal cabinet for sure. Just what John was saying there. Just last comment is that okay, so we're looking at Poilievre's side of the coin, and he's going to be sending in a team that is completely green here to do that job. And I'll leave it at that, Rick. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Really appreciate it. Who else is on the line with us?
Oh, this is
Can I make one further comment on this?
Charles, yeah.
When I was working in the government, it was at the time of, I can't remember if it was FTA or NAFTA, but we were negotiating with the U.S. and we were sending down teams to negotiate that consisted of, a dozen people at most, a few top bureaucrats and some backup staff. And there were some people here in the back rooms working on things. They'd go down to negotiate with the states, and the U.S. would have a similar team in the room, but they would have 300, 400 industrialists in the next room. And they would go and check with the people outside to see what was actually happening before they came in. Now, I was asked to come in to look at a part of one of those, a small part of it. I wasn't involved in the negotiations, but these were people from Foreign Affairs came and asked me, and people that worked with me, to comment on something which was the subsidy of R&D, and it had been written out that we couldn't subsidize any R&D in industry because it was considered a subsidy and it was an interference with free trade, and it had essentially been locked in. And we were asked to comment, and we said, well, look, if you look very carefully at what the U.S. has done, it has exempted all the defense industry. And they had defined the defense industry as massive. It included their whole energy department. So anything that was actually being negotiated, they could do all of the subsidy of R&D and support in those other areas. But because of the deal, we couldn't. And we commented, we said, look, that's a real problem, because that means we cannot provide backup technical support. We can't provide money for R&D and development, but they can. And we were told, well, that's already locked in. There's nothing we can do to change it. So the way in which we send our negotiating teams and is a problem. And whether Poilievre will go down there on his own with half a dozen people, or whether he'll go with a big team in the back room giving him advice, I don't know. I would think that the approach that you really need to take is to have an understanding of the implications throughout the economy. And I think you can only get that if you actually get a lot of people involved.
Okay. Jack, you have your hand up.
Yeah, just before the speaker or the caller comes in, it astounds me as a hypnotist, especially, that how easily people are distracted and fooled, because before Trump became president, when Biden was in, Canada was in terrible condition. It was in a horrible shape. The Liberal government involved with destroyed this country, I believe. And they have very successfully, and Poilievre, who I backed at one time, I don't really support him 100% right now. He's better than Trudeau, though. But anyway, the point I'm making is that the country was in terrible shape, and all of a sudden now they've been able to, between Ford and Trudeau and Carney and a few others, they've been able to take the focus and make it orange man bad. Like everything's Trump's fault now. Everything's Trump's fault. And it's not. The fault in this country is what we're trying to do with the principles. The fault in this country is that people have been trained and mentally conditioned not to discuss important issues, which the government calls politics, and not to discuss religion, like, spiritual based stuff. And so it's almost like put a blanket or a mask over everything, and they're blaming Trump for everything, and the problem is not Trump.
Well, I'm not blaming Trump for everything, but these tariffs, this trade war, that's Trump.
It only became a trade war when Trudeau and Ford foolishly decided to make it a trade war. Trump very specifically made it very clear that the tariffs would never be put in place if Canada just stepped up to the plate as Mexico was supposed to, and put safeguards in place that the fentanyl flow would cut down and the illegal aliens would be cut back. And he was very specific about that when he before he put the tariffs on. He said there would be no tariffs.
But he did add to that, though, Jack, because he added comments about the money laundering. And Canada is now viewed as one of the money laundering capitals of the world. But we don't handle it very well. And the illustration is that we have, through our regulatory processes, levied some fines against some banks that have been involved in money laundering of a few millions of dollars here and there. But the U.S. went after I think it was the Royal Bank, and
TD.
They levied a
Toronto Dominion Bank.
Oh, it was TD. I'm sorry. Yeah, it was TD, and levied a fine of $3 billion for money laundering. So the U.S. has been more keen, and this was under Biden.
Against which bank? TD, and where were those bank branches?
those were in the U.S.
In the U.S., right? So you're talking about banks with, home offices in Canada, but yeah, it was the U.S. banking system that was allowing that to go on. So it's not an exclusive Canadian problem, and they're conflating this. And I'm sorry, but they're using it as a pretext for this trade war, which is all about annexing our country.
You may be right, and I'm not willing to come down on what Trump is trying to do, because I think it's unpredictable.
He's telling us exactly what he wants to do.
Well, I think the art of the deal is proving to me to be a very mischievous kind of approach that's very troublesome to me.
Very costly.
Very costly, very unpredictable. And I don't know what the outcome will be.
Let's get back to the main issue.
Sure.
The main issue is the average Canadian is not involved in choosing leaders in this country who have integrity and morals and honesty and transparency
I agree with that.
vision and like, who actually care for their constituents. And George Soros, same as he's done now as every other country, has NGOs operating in this country who have disconnected the average Canadian from the people that lead them. And there's a huge abyss or a disconnection between us. The leaders no longer listen to us. They listen to the NGOs who are paid for by Soros.
Yeah, well, while we sit and think that Trump is still joking or using the art of the deal, and I think we're in danger of losing our country, but that's my view. What's the view of the new caller? Who's on the line with us?
This is Raphael.
Raphael, my friend, welcome back to the show.
I'm going to say happy Sunday to everybody. The thing I'm saying is people need to understand, like, Freeland, I really have a lot of trust on her, because she's probably among the top 10 best economists in the world. I mean, that woman knows her stuff. And if somebody like me can understand this, I know she knows it better than me. What Trump is doing right now, the origin of that thing is World War II, 1968, when we passed 1948, when we passed the martial law. The martial law, nobody forced us. We forced it upon everybody else in the world. We told Europe, your industry, don't worry about it. And talking to Europe, we were talking to everybody in the world. We said, don't worry about it. We will cover everything. We will provide you everything you want.
You're talking about the Marshall Plan, not martial law, right?
My Marshall Plan, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Everything you want. But only one thing is, you can tariff the hell out of our product when you are up to par. But we will not complain, but keep on buying our stuff. So everybody in the world, they were like, fine. So Canada felt comfortable. I mean, we were friendly. So we're not going to duplicate our industry. So everybody follow that. Yeah. But it's not going to stay forever. So now what happened now is United States resuscitation in the 1970, 1980, Europe had an industry. And they found out like your product were not up to par. So the Europeans, they're not going to buy the Ford because the Ford wasn't good. So they can buy their own car. But you get mad because they did not buy enough of your car. Right. But it's not that. You told them they can tariff you. That's what you told them back then when they didn't have nothing. So now they got good stuff. They don't want to buy your stuff. And now American people also realizing their cars are better than yours. They start buying those things, and you get all pissed off. And to conclude now, Trump came, you have problem, you lie about the money you have in fucked up, so you cannot prove you got all that gold, and you're going to have to show it up. You have $33 trillion in deficit. People in the world, they start talking to you, they'll be like, hey, there's going to be a change. You're going to have to show, you're going to have to balance your book. Right. Canada, the dollar is I think it's 77 or 87 cents. This is real money. Our US dollar is probably 20 cents. And there will be a time where we wish we were the Canadian dollar. So Trump think he gonna do everything in 1 year, and everybody in the world, they are looking at him like you're funny. You're not gonna intimidate smart people.
Do you
think people in the world
do you have a question,
believe
Raphael,
that-
for our guests?
Yeah, my question is, I believe Ford, a team of Ford and Freeland, they're gonna destroy Trump in that negotiation. Because these people, they know what they're doing, and people need to understand what took place in 1978 when the electricity did not, when the electricity went away because something happened.
So what's your question?
My thing is, my question to these two is, what do they think about this prime minister? Do you think this man is gonna be better than Trudeau to take the fight to Trump? I believe
I think we've probably already addressed that in a roundabout way. I don't think they're optimistic.
If I might not make an observation, you're raising questions going back to the Marshall Plan and to what happened post Second World War, and there are very significant things that happened then, and we're seeing the consequences now, and the effect of all of that was that the U.S. following Second World War ended up funding the defense of all the world, Western world, against the perceived Soviet Union threat, and they've shouldered the bulk of the costs, at the burden of that cost through that time period, and right now you're right, their deficit is, and Rick, I think you corrected me last time that the U.S. debt is $37 trillion, which is massive, and it has to be dealt with. And certainly with the creation of BRICS and the attempt to create other currencies that will displace the U.S. dollar as the world reserve currency, the U.S. has got a problem. So the question is, how does the U.S. get out of it? And I'm going to digress a bit from what the direct things that we're talking about here to say what's happened in the last few days with respect to Ukraine is really telling, because the U.S. cut off the supply of intel to Ukraine that allows it to do its targeting. And because it's done that, there have been a lot more war crimes at targeting civilian infrastructure. But the European countries have begun to say, well, wait a minute, look at this. Musk is threatening to shut down Starlink. The U.S. has called on the suppliers of up-to-date photographs, satellite photographs. They've blocked that from going to Ukraine, so it allows them not to see what's happening and where the attacks are coming from.
Yes.
And Germany is starting to raise the question, well, do we really want these F-35s? Because every one of those aircraft is set up in a way that the U.S. can shut them down, no matter who owns them. Because you would design them in a way that you would not allow, if they were fell into enemy hands, you wouldn't want the enemy to be able to use them against you. So there are big questions now about, in the U.S., in trying to get Europe, because it's been trying to do it since Nixon, to try to increase its expenditures for NATO to get it up to target, and they haven't gone there. And this is Trump's he tried to do it his last term, and he's really pushing now for them to do it, and maybe they're beginning to see. But it looks, from an economic perspective, this is actually very damaging to the U.S. economy, as would be many of the tariffs that are imposed on Canada, because the U.S. defense industry exports to other countries are a huge gain to the U.S. economy.
That's right.
And if countries that no longer see that as providing a reliable and usable defense weapon tool, then that dries up. So what we're seeing is a massive shift, realignment in the world as to how things will be done. And so the U.S. is trying to deal with a problem, and the question is the way that it's doing it making the problem for the U.S. worse?
It's making it worse for the world, but continue.
For the world and for the U.S. So there are huge problems here, and so our negotiations have to be in a bigger context. And Trump did mention in some of his positions on trade that Canada really has not done its bit on defense, and the threat is actually coming from China and Russia, and we need to find a way to deal with that threat. And Canada is essential to part of that process. So the question is, are the approaches that Trump has taken, the unpredictable and variable ways that things are said, is that reducing confidence all around in the United States? And will that erode the ability of the U.S. faster to remain as the leading economy in the world?
It's not going to be, and it's eroding confidence, and it's destroyed confidence in Europe and all around the world with all of the U.S. allies. So that is the problem. Yeah.
So I'm in full agreement with that, and that. So we're in a new world, and we have
a new world order. Isn't that interesting? But it's not the new world order that everyone was expecting. It's coming from the other side, because the world is being carved into hemispheric zones of dominance, which is what I've been talking about for a long time, which Steve Bannon talks about. He tells you exactly what he's doing. Trump is telling you what he's doing, and Europe is topsy-turvy now. NATO's done, and Europe is now reconfiguring everything. They're ramping up their spending. This is making the world a much, much more dangerous place, because it has destabilized the order of things since World War II. They're already getting ready to ramp up production of nuclear weapons in Europe.
But getting ready to ramp up is not the same as actually doing it.
Oh, they're going to do it. They're doing it. They're not coming back. And frankly, either are we, unless we're absorbed into the U.S. Which
what I'm really saying is that it takes time from coming to the realization to actually getting things produced. Takes a great deal of time.
Yeah, well, in the short term, that's why France is readjusting what they're doing with their nukes, because the UK nukes only function with the U.S. systems, so they're neutered. And they can't rely on the U.S. because, in my view, what Donald Trump has done by cutting off the intel is immoral. It's cruel. It's a betrayal, and the blood of potentially thousands of Ukrainian soldiers will be on his hands, and the deaths of all those civilians over the past 48 hours. Those deaths, the blood is on Donald Trump's hands, because he cut off the ability for the Ukrainians to defend those civilians. Not offensive weapons. He cut off their intelligence. They can't see. They can't even properly target the incoming missiles. So that's why those civilian targets were blown to bits. That's why those civilians died. That's Donald Trump's fault. That is like that's a clear sign that he's flipped sides. He's fighting the Ukrainians. A country that he made that the United States made a promise to, and Donald Trump has now shown that the U.S. is not a reliable partner. No one's ever going to trust the United States again. He's destroyed his country.
Well, Obama, John, I'm sorry to push, but Obama didn't respond to the attack of Ukraine in 2014, and Trump didn't after 2016. And nothing was done as well reasonably under Biden. So it's just an acceleration of that deterioration of confidence in the U.S.
Absolutely.
The point I would bring it back to, and it's coming back to the original question, the leader we need is a leader who is not just there dealing with trade with the U.S. It's how do we restructure our economy to be a productive economy, a wealth-generating economy, under principled rules that our government operates under.
Right. If we are even going to remain a country, if we're able to withstand all of this, because these are shifts in the political tectonic plates that Canada may not be able to withstand. John, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to say that Charles and Rick, you're both on the right track. I think you're both leaning indirectly to where things are leading. One of the things that Charles was mentioning, Canada we're looking at buying something like $22 billion worth of F-35s, and we may be canceling that.
Cancel it now.
You know, exactly. And there are other things that are in the works. And the other thing about other countries joining, and NATO is done and so forth. Well, if you recall, just a few months ago, a country that was once neutral, Sweden, is now joining NATO. That is a real interesting position, why they're doing that. And I think they're doing that because they have fears also, along with Finland and Norway and some of the other Baltic countries that are around there. So I think the alarm should go out, but I don't think it's a red alert right now. I just think we need to be cautious. We need to start to look and start asking simple questions. And I agree. One of the problems we had here in Canada was we did not have a strong leader, a strong patriotic leader. We failed to have that, and that's why we're in the mess we're in right now. Whether it doesn't matter whether you're blue, red, blue, green, or orange. That doesn't matter. You have to be a strong leader for Canadians. Once you're a prime minister, you're the prime minister of all Canadians, not just one color of Canadians. But at the end of the day, we all have to work together at this. And I have my own theory of Trump's motivation in all this, because he keeps talking about, as you say, one world order there, Rick. He wants Greenland, he wants Panama, and he wants Canada. We're going to those global continents, if you want to talk to, not individual little countries. I'm all in favor of having let's say like a union as the European Union with one currency. But I'm not in favor of giving up Canada for a 51st state. That's for sure. That's some of my thoughts.
Okay, Jack, you had your hand up.
Well, we got to get back to the principles, but I think that the cancer, and I mentioned this before, the crippled turbo cancer.
Keep in mind we are on YouTube, so just that's a sensitive subject. Just so it's just self-censor a little bit so we don't get or use certain language, right? So that
it's an analogy. So
sure.
It's not,
okay.
All right. So the idea basically is that apathy, complacency, and indifference is rotten in this country. And so before we get too involved in discussing what's going on in Ukraine or the Baltic states or even the U.S. with this thing, is we have to discuss how do we get the Canadians to become aware of the process of what they need to do. They need to step up to the plate at every level. Like Lisa Robinson's a good example. The way she's being ripped apart in the Pickering Council. Like, the citizens have to step up to the plate and make sure that their leaders have the morals and the values and the integrity and the principles as what defines that. So the question is how do we get the Canadians at the discussing around the table of their homes the criteria that leaders need to meet before we vote for them, even a school trustee should have to meet the principles before they're put in place. That's what happens in this country, is that people were put in place, like my buddy who ran for the Liberal Party actually always says, well, Trudeau's got nice hair. I mean, that's a joke in one way, but in another way, it's not. Some people voted for him because they think he's nice looking or something, and so they vote for people on their persona of what they present, which is very easily to do, just like his father was presented by Keith the Rainmaker Davies. He was creative, right? And so we have to figure out a way to get these principles on the table of every Canadian. So we have a caller. Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah. So go ahead, caller.
Hello, Rick, panel.
Antonio, my friend, welcome back.
Sorry for making you wait.
No problem. Thank you, Rick, for the opportunity. So I didn't call in for this, but I agree that the U.S. is falling, and I think it's all by design. But I think we've done the same here in Canada. But anyways, I have a twofold question for tonight. I'm hearing a lot on principle. So which principles or morals are you speaking of? And two, who do you feel is the best candidate or political party to implement these morals or principles?
Well, if you go to our website, which is www.OurPrinciples.ca, and you will read, Rick has it on the screen in the opening, you will read what's called the rights of all persons and the duties of government. They're very concise, they're very simple, they're not a complex thing. And when you read these principles, they're based on what every successful society has used down through the centuries. And Charles is here, gathered all this information and put it together into a very simple form, which we call our principles. And this is what we're trying. We're nonpartisan to start with, and this is what we're trying to do: is get these principles in front of every individual like yourself, and ask you, like, how do you feel about this? Does it resonate with you? And what is the best way to share it? And so on the website, we have a PDF 8.5 by 11. We have a trifold, which can be handed out, and they're black and white. They're very economical. You can print them off and hand them to your neighbors, your family, discuss them around your table. And but the principles basically lay out morals, people with morals, values, family values, people that actually care about their constituents and listen to their constituents.
Can I ask a question about that, Jack? These should extend to all people?
All people, every race, every color, every nationality. Doesn't new ones. The minute they land in Canada, they should be handed these.
And do you think that our efforts to promote these principles should extend beyond our borders to even other countries?
Absolutely, they're worldwide principles. What they basically say is that I will treat you with respect.
I agree.
And I will respect your choices as long as they do not infringe on my choices.
Sure.
And we'll discuss, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let's sit down and discuss so we get balance and fairness and justice.
Which
extends,
you're talking about property rights. It's also about respecting the sovereignty of nations, right? So that one nation doesn't invade another. And you're talking about the right here to defend their family and their property. So yeah, I mean, if you don't at least try to defend even other countries that come under attack from authoritarian regimes, then as our opening song says, the freedom for one depends on freedom for all. Because if you allow other people's rights to be violated, then you don't really have freedom yourself.
True.
You're right on, Rick. That's the whole thing. And the other part of it is not to harm anyone. If you're doing things that are harming other people, that's not freedom. You're taking advantage. And that's what people need to understand. People can't be harmed in all this, in these ventures. And government sometimes doesn't see it that way. We have to look in ways that we help and support people in all ways of life, no matter if they're a bricklayer or if they're a CEO of a major company. We have to work together to ensure that the people of Canada and our sort of work with the principles. I mean, not every principle is going to work in every situation, but what the principles are, they're a guideline. They're a guideline to tell Canadians who we are as people and as a nation. And if other people want to see this and take value in it, they can actually lift their own culture, their own nationality, their people, so that we're all on the same page and we treat everyone fairly and equally.
So I'm hearing some good stuff. There, but who put together these principles? Do they come from any kind of source?
Charles?
Or did you guys put these principles together yourselves?
No, we're going to have Charles answer this one. You up to it, Charles?
Yeah. In fact, I mentioned at the top that I had written a book, Lost Principles of Our Civil Heritage. And what I tried to do was to identify the common ground that was behind societies of free persons back from the time of ancient Sumer. And so if you look through this, it draws from ancient Sumer.
Sumer. What is that?
Oh, it's a country in southern Iraq. we're speaking of something 4,000 BC.
Right.
So
Babylon.
Babylon
So
came
it's a
later.
Babylonian principles.
It's pre-Babylon actually, and then you see them being rearticulated again in the time of Babylon under Hammurabi's code. You see them being articulated repeatedly in Greece, particularly in Athens. You see them in Rome. You see them through Europe in the Middle Ages, and they get refined, they get fine-tuned, but you find them being articulated again and again and again, and I'll actually just read a little piece here, which is from the inside of the trifold. Rick pulled up something from the website, but the trifold, which you can get printed, I'll just read this. It says, to respond to your question, these principles emerged in ancient times, and they were refined through the ages and turned in Britain into a system of government and law that aims to protect the rights and the freedom of every citizen. Based on those principles, Canada developed as a country with a firm commitment to freedom, equality, justice, peace, and prosperity. And then it goes on to say, which is describing what I think is a worldwide problem in the West. Things have changed. Domestic and global forces have taken control of the institutions that were created to protect our rights, and they are using the powers of government to tell us what we must think and what we must do. And we've seen that. You can say that in the US, you can see it in Britain, you can see it in France, you can see it in Germany, and you can see it here. And you can see that happening at the federal, provincial, and municipal governments. So this document, the wording is drawn not from any particular old document, but trying to synthesize from all the old statements what makes sense. It draws a lot from it bears in mind the French Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen from the French Revolution. It bears in mind the 1948 United Nations Declaration of the Rights, Declaration of Human Rights. It looks at our charter, but it does not use those words. What it does is it actually tries to synthesize them in words for the purpose of getting people to talk about them. It's not a legal document that we've produced. It's a document that really says, is this the common ground? Do we believe this? Sorry. Is this what we can unite around, that we would all accept this as the principles upon which we should live and that our government should uphold? And I think what we have seen tragically is what we've seen through history. The principles get articulated in one form, they get incorporated in constitutions and laws, and then governments come in and abuse the powers. And then over time, you get a fighting back to get them reasserted, and they're refined in the words. But I think we are at this point in the West at a very low time where governments increasingly see their job as having one office. They can impose whatever they want to do on all of us and force us to comply. This document starts with the value of the person and the duty of the government to respect the person and the freedom. And I will say, because it's important, this doesn't say an individual can do whatever they want to do. The individual has a duty to respect the rights of every other person and to ensure that those rights are protected. So this is really how do human beings live together as free persons in a society. Long history behind these. The words are words that ultimately I guess I wrote, but they draw from these much older texts and older ideas.
Right. Thank you for that explanation. Good explanation.
There is
I thought
I
that
could just interrupt
you
Rick.
mentioned Britain and their values at one time, and we're an offshoot of Britain, and we're our Constitution is based on Judeo-Christian values. So some of what you said seems to go along with that. Would you agree with that?
I wouldn't agree totally to that because there's a lot more to the statements of the principles that we're doing because these things were introduced way before Christianity was. One of the things that we haven't mentioned in the principles in the literature, which is very important, and we all seem to forget about it. It's the responsibility of citizens and their rights to act, to uphold these principles. When governments start doing the wrong things, when people start doing the wrong things or taking advantage of and so forth, it's up to the people to bring it back to the principles and say, hey, this is wrong. This is what needs to be done. And if we don't do that, then that's when it goes astray. That's when we find ourselves behind the times, and we need to change that. But that's my opinion of it, that how important citizens are, the responsibility of citizens in all this. Otherwise, if we don't care, if we don't get involved, nothing happens.
And before we get on to these other comments, I'm just looking through the chat here, and I see Johnny is spreading his pro-Russia propaganda again tonight. And he's saying everyone is afraid of Russia because they never lost any wars. And Johnny, I'm going to correct you again, my friend from Toronto. That's not true, because I'm old enough to remember how Russia had its butt handed to it in Afghanistan, which was the war that they were trying to fight between like 79, 89, before the U.S. went in, before 9/11. They've lost many wars or have failed to achieve their objectives. There's the Russo-Japan War from early 1900s, the Crimean War, 1850, 1853, 1856, the Chechen War in 94, the Russo-Polish War from 1919 to 1921, and there have been others, but the one that is top of mind for me is what happened to them in Afghanistan. So nice try, because you're the one trying to scare everybody. Can't take on Russia because they never lose. Well, everybody loses sometimes.
Not just that. Not just that. In Afghanistan, it was a bunch of old boys our age, called them what do you call them?
The Mujahideen.
Mujahideen.
Yeah.
Yeah, a bunch of old boys. But I still respect Putin more than I respect Trudeau. So the caller.
Do you want me to bring up the pictures of the war crimes of the hooking the electrodes up to prisoners' genitals? I can do that if you'd like.
Hell,
I've got them on file.
Yeah, I'd like to address that one statement if it's possible.
Mm-hmm. We don't need the pictures.
Yeah, we're on YouTube, remember.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Just saying.
So I respectfully disagree that those laws were before Christianity, because, what Jesus said was, he said, I didn't come to change the laws. I've come to uphold them.
Yep.
So the 10 Commandments were before the Egyptians. Okay. So, that's where you got them from, right? You hearing what I'm saying? So, but anyways, you really haven't answered my second question, which is, who do you feel is the best candidate or political party to implement these morals or principles?
I can answer that if you want.
Sure.
But before I do, I missed your name. Was it Antonio? What was the caller's
Antonio,
name?
yes.
Yes. Antonio. So now the key to this entire program here is, what do you do with the principles? Are you willing to sit and read them? Are you willing to hand them out to your neighbors, family, friends, and discuss them? And if you see something, I wouldn't use the word inappropriate, but if you see something with them you feel should change, go on our website and email us and tell us. You know what I mean?
I will.
Okay.
I'll do that. I will do that. I'll run through them.
Okay, for me personally, the candidate that I know would live these principles is Grant Abraham of the United Party for Canada. He's built his party on biblical principles and bringing back spiritual morals to leadership. The chance of him winning right now is probably dismal or low because of the propaganda machine of the liberals and the conservatives. But that's who I would choose, Grant Abraham.
So we know that the chances of him getting in, as you said, is slim to none. So let's go on the ones that will be elected, which will be most likely Pierre or Carney.
I would choose Polyev.
I'd agree with that.
Hands
But
down.
it's still yet to be determined what takes place, of course,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, but he's. I think it's like the old lesser of two evils. Polyev was my first choice until he made a couple of comments, and he started using
till he
the
opened his
Orange Man
mouth.
bad. Yeah, till he started saying Orange Man bad and using what I call the fear tactics to to gather votes. I don't know, Trump's bad, I'll fight him. Till he started doing that, he had 100% of my support. But I'll probably vote for him because we need to get rid of the Liberal Party.
Go ahead, Charles.
Agreed.
As we move forward, no matter who gets elected, Jack is really right to keep pulling us back onto the principles. And the attempt of the website is to encourage people to talk about the principles, to embrace them, and to act on them, and to press for change that's consistent with them. They might be slightly changed. People might say, I want a slightly different word here or word there, or something you've left out, or something shouldn't be worded quite that way. But if we can talk from the level of principles where people matter, every person matters, and the job of government is to protect the rights of every person. If that's where we agree, then no matter who gets in government and we find a way to influence government to move in that direction, then we avoid the risk of the division and the hatred and the massive fights. And from my perspective, based on what I've seen, I would say between the Liberals under Carney, given what Carney has said, and the Conservatives under Poilievre, I think the prospect of having a government be influenced by the principles is greater under Conservative government at this time. We need, I think, a massive shift from where we have been, but ultimately it comes to the people. And we've basically let ourselves be led by governments, by academics, by the media into believing certain things. And we've put principles aside and we focus on the policy. And I know tonight I was talking about some policy issues as well. You can't put them away. But if we agree on the principles and we keep the pressure on governments, federally, provincially, and municipally, to respect them, then we have a chance of moving in the right direction.
Do you have any idea how to do that?
We're doing it now.
I mean, yes, I know I guess with our voice, right? I guess speak out and speak to our representatives and so on and so forth.
It has to come. I think having thought a lot about this and having been in government and seen how things happen and how bureaucrats can influence government and to do things that may not be best for the people, I would say the only way I can see to do it is from the people. And that means to engage in the widespread discussion, the sharing of the ideas, and to really then use that discussion around the dining room table, in the lunch rooms at work, in order to get people engaged. And to then use those principles to assess particular policies. And if we go back to Carney's speech, which we had at the beginning of this program, to go beyond the generalities. Yes, I'm a great Canadian. Poilievre is a horrible guy. Trump is a horrible guy. And to really say, let's look at the policies. What are they? And do they mean that persons are free? Do they mean that government is going to be controlling things, telling us what to think? We must unite. That's true. We should unite. But do we unite behind a set of policies that say government has to be big? Or do we not unite behind a set of principles that say every person matters? They have rights and we have to protect the rights. So that can only come from people. And it's so if the principles are get back into the common discussion, then there's the chance for change. Will it be easy? No. Will it take time? Yes. But that's where I think we really have to go.
Go ahead, Jack. You've got your hand up.
That's great.
Antonio, it's obvious you're way above average intelligence just by the way you're speaking, and you have really good insights, and the questions you're asking and stuff prove that.
Thank you.
So my question to you, sir, is if you and I were sitting somewhere talking, What I would ask you is to first read the principles, go to the website, put some comments on it, right? But the main thing is I would ask you, do you have family and do you have friends? Do you have neighbors that, are seeking for answers? And the key is I don't ask people what they think of the principles because our thought patterns are controlled by media and all that stuff. What I ask them is, do they resonate with you? How do you feel about them? What do they make you feel? And the ones I've shared it with have said the same thing. They feel hope. They feel discouragement at the same time because they think, like, how do we get this across the country? Like, it'll take 50 years to share it, but it's not going to. If you share with your friends and neighbors and family people, like, and people at work, if you still work, or people at the bus stop, people at the bank, etc., that's how we share it. That's how we get it into the hands of families and get discussions.
Yes.
People have been trained not to talk politics or religion. And at this point, we need to get back to discussing those important issues.
I agree. And no, I do discuss this stuff. I'm not afraid to bring it up, even though they think I'm a whack job. See, I think that most people know that there's a problem, but they don't know the core of the problem. And that's, they're too busy trying to live life and trying to make it to be concerned. And that, I think, is a big problem, until it's too late, until they lose everything, and then it's too late at that point. And that's the problem. So I'd hope, my prayer and hope is that people wake up and see, the truth of what's going on, or, that's my view on things. But I do spread it, but you talk to people and they, some see it. I'm not saying all, but the majority don't.
Well, you have what's called a laser dot, what I call, and have coined the laser dot syndrome. And that is that people get caught up in the most foolish conversations and chasing the laser dot like cats chasing a laser dot on the floor, if you've ever done that. And they chase after these dots and they completely miss the important thing. And the important thing right now is our leaders have grown away from us. They don't listen to us. And the only way you can change that is by talking to people in your home, your neighbors, your work, like we talked earlier, and sharing this document. You can print it out very cheaply. They're black and white, they're cheap, and they hand them out to people. That's the key.
Yes, and sadly, the morals. That's why I bring it up. Is the morals have they're buying into some of the stuff these liberals are pushing, which is just, I can't see how, but it's like I don't know. It's just it's a problem for sure.
Charles, you had your
But that's
hand up.
why I bring it up.
Yeah, you make a very good point, Antonio, that something's wrong, but things don't work. And I'll just mention a couple of them here. One of them is we've got this massive crisis, and we've got our elected representatives in the House of Commons. And the House of Commons is shut down right now. And it's been shut down in the oddest of ways, which was clearly done for political advantage and to prevent a non-confidence vote that would have resulted in a general election and new people there. So many people have commented on the failure of our parliament, that institution, the people's representatives, which in our constitution doesn't have political parties in it at all. It's there as each representative from the constituencies represents their constituents, not the parties. So that institution is not doing what it's supposed to do. The Senate has just had an extra, all the vacant seats have been now nominated by Trudeau to be filled. And I gather there'll be roughly 90% of the Senate will have been appointed by Trudeau. Well, maybe already is by now. That institution doesn't seem to be doing its job as the House of Sober Second Thought. And if one looks at our courts, would you really trust our courts in terms of their process and procedures to give
Not at
an
all.
outcome?
I've been through the process, and I've seen the corruption.
So even the timing, the way they're structured, is biased against the small person and in favor of those who have deep pockets, including government, that can go after people.
Lawyers.
So
Yeah, agreed.
lawyers. So the institutions have been taken over and dragged away from their core purpose. And so what is the core purpose? Well, that's what the principle says. It talks about all persons having rights and governments having the duties to ensure those rights are protected. And what we're seeing is our institutions don't do that.
Is the court corrupt because you didn't get the ruling you wanted, or is it corrupt because it's corrupt?
I actually caught a judge lying, and the only reason I dropped it because it would have cost more money to see. They make it so that you can't win, but it would have cost. It wasn't even for me that I went to court, Rick. It was for my disabled sister.
He was lying. What did he lie about, Antonio?
Who lie about?
The judge.
The judge?
Mm-hmm.
The judge lied. She didn't. It's not necessarily a lie. What she did was she ruled, and I caught her on this. She ruled that if you go on Zoom on a Zoom meeting, that you have to be on the Zoom meeting. Okay, you have because someone can influence them if they're not showing their picture on the Zoom. And when I went, it was actually my sister. When she came on, she wasn't on the Zoom, so she was probably being influenced from someone else. So that's where the judge is the actual one that made that ruling. She made it a precedent, and she went against her own precedent.
Why was this a situation where they needed to protect the identity of your sister to protect a victim?
No,
or something?
No, it's a new ruling. If you look it up, it's like if you do a Zoom meeting, you have
in court. You mean like if you're appearing virtually in a court?
Yes.
Courtroom.
Yes.
All right.
So you have to be seen on the camera. Otherwise, there could be someone there influencing you on what you're doing.
Okay.
And she's the one that made that ruling, and I caught her on that. But I let it go because it would have cost my little sister more. So I let it go. That's the only reason I did. But that's corruption, if you ask me.
I think cost is a big factor here, and those with deeper pockets can actually prevent people, and people will not go because of the deep pockets issue. I may make a mention. I was once called as an expert witness in a case that was brought against the government. I worked for the government at the time, and the people who were suing the government had a good case, but they didn't understand the case properly. There were details that they just didn't know. Mm-hmm. And so they approached me, and I listened to what they were asking, and I said, yeah, I'll appear, while they were subpoenaing me. So I appeared, but I talked to our lawyer, the government lawyer first, and I said, look, they don't get it. There are issues that they have stronger case than they understand. Mm-hmm. And he said, just answer their questions, don't get into the detail. So courts operate under the Courts of Justice Act, and lawyers become officers of the Court of Justice when they're called to the bar, but they're actually not seeking justice. They're seeking the interest of their client, the way that the system works. Mm-hmm. So anyway, yeah. So I was on the stand, and for some reason I was in the court when the two previous witnesses were there, and who were called by the people suing the government. And I watched the government lawyer destroy their credibility through tricky questions. And I probably shouldn't have been allowed in the court at the time, but I saw what he did. And then I'm on the stand, and he starts to ask me questions. And so he asks a very pointed question, yes or no. And so a couple of questions in, I begin to see where he's going to try to discredit me. And so I turned to the judges. He said, because they said yes or no. I turned to the judge and I said, look, I've sworn to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And if I just answer yes or no, I will be misleading the court. So I won't be telling the truth. And the judge said, proceed. So I leaked a little bit of the information that they should have had. And that happened in two more questions. I leaked a little bit more. And then the government lawyer stopped questioning me. And so you look at this and you say, is the system stacked? And I would say the procedures don't secure justice. Those who have more money, more depth, or who are able to call people who are recognized as credible professionals, get to carry the day. And that doesn't necessarily produce justice, because someone who's paid to tell you a story may not be, even with the professional credentials, may not be doing it. I think our courts need a very thorough look at, and the cost of going and the procedures make it very difficult for a lot of people to do so. There are issues there.
100%. And you know,
sorry,
the
Antonio,
other
we've got, I
problem
think,
is that justice
Antonio,
delayed is justice denied.
yeah, we've got another caller on the line, I believe.
Go ahead. I'm going to let you go, Rick. Rick,
yeah.
I just want to say, you know, despite all this that's going on, I put my hope in the Lord Jesus Christ, so I don't fear the things that are going on. And I'll leave it at that. You guys, been great to talk to you guys. Have a good night, and take care.
Thank you,
And
Antonio.
Go to the website and pass it on.
I will
talk about it.
Definitely look into that.
Thank you, Antonio. Thank you for your questions, too.
You're welcome. Take care, guys. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you, Antonio. Antonio's been around like since the beginning around here, so it's always great to have him back. And who's the other caller on the line now?
It's Isabel.
Isabel. Welcome.
Yeah, Mike. Hi, guys. It's nice to see all of you here. Get a little bit of information that doesn't help my distress, but you know, we're all in it together. And I know you have the website now. We'll be looking it up.
I have to stop for a second. Every time somebody says that phrase, we're all in it together, I get triggered. Just letting you know, since the pandemic, I get triggered. So
don't get triggered.
If I get really manic now, just anyway, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt, but I couldn't help it.
I know, Rich. I'm sorry. I know with the website now, because I live basically in a senior community, not community, a small town. I mean, I'm from Glencoe, so I'm not far from you in Chatham. And a lot of people who have trouble to read, and a lot of them are not on the web. I'm just wondering if it would be a good suggestion, like a community meeting, where people could come and voice their opinion on something like that.
Absolutely.
If you would like that. If you would like to do that, Jack has a Zoom account, and we would, if you set up your end of it, you need to have a computer or a few computers there that people could come to, but we would be glad to have a chat with people in your community.
Just like we're doing now.
I'm thinking something like that, like at like we have a main library here where everybody knows we're pretty well centrally located. I mean, anything in town here is 2 blocks away. So it's not far for everybody to get to. But yeah, I mean, I know when I talk to people, they go, yeah, but we're a small community. I go, yeah, but if it can take one person to create freedom for everybody, it can take one small community to start things. And I know people are afraid. They're like, well, we can't do that.
Isabel,
well, why not?
Isabel, that's why the three of us got together and started putting together our principles. And by the way, I've done a number of sort of group meetings where I've actually gone to their community centers or their meeting places, whether there was 5 people or 50 or 100 people, and sat down and talked to people all about that and did a presentation. And what comes out of it is that, as one of the earlier callers said, people don't realize what's going on. They're too busy. Well, you start to slow down and people start to ask the questions, what are we doing? And they start to ask, why are we doing these things? Why aren't we looking at the principles? Why are we not saying to our politicians, we need to be doing this? Why are we looking at our neighbors kind of differently? I lived on a small court, 30 homes, and either one way in and one way out. And I'll tell you, all you would ever get from anybody was a wave. You never knew who you were waving to. You didn't know their family names or kids. And we need to get beyond that. And that's what the Principles is all about, is about sharing, working together and helping each other, but ensuring that the media is not censored, ensuring that we have the freedom of speech, ensuring that we have the freedom to travel and to ask questions. And that's what the Principles is all about. So in helping people. Jack?
Isabel, in the initial contact, could you gather people in a room with a computer screen like we're doing now, where a group of people can sit around like different homes, or even in the library or wherever you want, community hall? You put up a screen, and I have a Zoom account. We can put a Zoom, and we can talk to you guys directly on the initial contacts. And then as we gather people, we can come to a town hall for you, or we can come to a community center in person. But the initial contact, it's always best to do it this way and let people ask their questions and, feel comfortable with what they're going to give up their time for. Because it does.
And to see how much to have people come to a hall, then they're like, well, what's this all about? But if they're sitting in front of the screen, you can actually see how many people are interested. Are people really interested?
And they can go to the bathroom if they feel like it.
Yeah. I could probably look into the library here, or we have a heritage building here too. So that's something I can look into and see if they'd be willing to do that to get people interested. Because I talk to people in the community, and I'm very talkative. Rick knows that. And I talk to people in the community, and people are like, yeah, I don't get this. Like, what's going on here? Like, why is he doing this to us? We're his ally. But you get that information from people, and they're like, but what can we do?
Right. Well, Isabella, to do an in-house meeting, we need someone to have internet, a laptop, an HDMI cable, and to plug into a TV screen of some kind, so that a group of people can watch it. And believe it or not, you'll have us live, just like Rick is having us live right now. We'd love to be part of your group, because the more people understand the principles, the duties of government, and the responsibility of the citizens, the easier it is for them to understand what's going on.
Right.
Plus, what we're going to do, I've just been inspired to, we've talked about it before though. What we're going to do is we'll do a video talking about the principles, in not a question and answer one, but actually talking about the principles, a short summary where you can actually take that in a link and send it to all your family and friends if you want.
Right.
And find the ones who are interested.
That's what I want to do, like tonight, is share this. And I've shared Rick's channel many times, but and I've shared this tonight to other people to join in to see what's going on. So I'm hoping I'm going to get some feedback from this.
Good. If you go on info@OurPrinciples.ca, or you can put in Jack, any one of our names, Jack at OurPrinciples.ca, you can give us your contact information, and we can get in touch with you by phone or by text or by email and keep this flow of information going. Okay?
Right. Yep, I can do that.
Excellent.
Okay, and it's info@principles.ca.
OurPrinciples.ca.
That's the email, and then we each have our own with our name in front of it. So.
Okay, I will do that. That's all I wanted to know. I thank you guys. It's very informative. Thank you, Rick. This is awesome.
Thank you.
And
I did behave tonight.
We thank you, Isabel. Thank you for the interest, and we look forward to communicating with you.
Thank you very much, guys. Have a good night.
You too, Isabel.
Bye. Who's on the line
Bye-bye.
now?
And coming in from Eastern Ontario, just wanted to add on to Isabel's comment there. Yes, we have a Canadian election coming up shortly, and get out to your ridings and into your riding and listen to the the candidates' debates and see what they're putting up on the table for you. Thanks. Good night.
Thank you very much, Laurie. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what else would you like to highlight with regard to the principles tonight? Because I want to make sure you guys get to talk about the thing that you really came here to talk about most, not just Mr. Carney, our new incoming prime minister.
Or Mr. Trump.
That's true. Yeah. So we want to talk about the principles.
But those are the issues that people are really interested in. But what they forget is it all starts with the principles. We've been led down the road to look at other things instead of looking at the values and what's important. The person's character, their honesty, their integrity, their whole disposition of how they treat other people. But we've been sort of sold on a bag of goods that, oh, this guy is great. Oh, this guy knows this. Oh, this guy's been here. And we fail to understand what the person is really all about.
Is it fair to say that the way I'm viewing this, the principles that you have laid out are really the same ones that all of Western society was founded on? And you just want to get back to that. And in that way, it's not like big L liberal party liberalism, but it is classical liberalism. It's about individual rights, freedoms, property rights, rule of law, respect, sure, individual responsibility, those kinds of concepts.
Yeah, and the other thing is this. Is that not only are people been convinced not to talk politics and religion, they've been convinced that they do not have the intellect, they do not have the understanding, they do not have the insight to be able to make major decisions that affect a country. And it's the exact opposite. Like Isabel, like Antonio, all of them, they're proof right there that there's people who care and have and understand what needs to be done. They just need a venue to do it. And Bruce Party said it, critical mass numbers is the key. So as we share the principles and gather more and more people together, those numbers will be created. There'll be numbers of common sense. There'll be numbers of not radical, foolish things. There'll be people sitting down around tables in community halls, rationally, quietly, respectfully discussing what needs to be done. How to educate the rest of the country to making good choices.
You see, what we're doing right now, when you look at young people today, they're not being innovative anymore. They're not being creative. They're being sold a pound of information, and they're going with it, as opposed to making their own decisions, thinking outside the box, being creative. One thing with Canada, even though we're such a small country, and you look at all the marvelous things that we've invented, we've brought to the world, and a lot of them were because these were average, ordinary people, but they had principle. They knew what was right. They did what was right. But we've got away from that. And what we're doing is we're listening to people's policies that are being put in place, not principles, but policies. And we have to get back to the principles so that we understand the basics of going forward. This is what we want to do. This is who we want to be. This is what we want to strive for, not what some other group, party, or individual's policies are driving us towards. Children today, and especially in high schools, when you talk about history, I really questioned some of their understandings of history. It's like, well, we just have to memorize this, but they don't really understand how we got here, because history put us here and it repeats itself over and over again. Yet they don't see it that way. They just see it as a bunch of events that they have to memorize. Math is the same way. It all adds up and it keeps moving forward. But we have to step back, and we have to get back to something that people can understand and start. Because what we've done is, well, what has happened is people have pushed the principles away. So we have nothing to sort of contradict or weigh against or judge. This is right, this is wrong. principles are right.
Charles?
All these policies are someone else's.
Go ahead, Charles.
A gentleman a couple of minutes ago suggested we go to the all candidates meetings and ask the candidates questions. I make an observation on this. Most all candidates meetings are called by public interest groups that have a particular agenda, and they narrow their focus on that agenda. And it's very hard to get a question in, and you've got very limited time and very little ability to get a response. In part to get around this, a person behind another website, Political Scorecards, tried to get answers from the candidates from all ridings across Ontario in the recent Ontario election. So there were a set of questions asked, and they were, some of them were towards policy, but they were starting with basic principles. Whom will you represent? If there's a conflict between your party's interests and the needs and rights of your constituents, where will you stand? So there were the 56 questions, and there are, I'm going to get the number wrong, 130 odd ridings in Ontario. And so if one assumes there are 5 candidates per riding, we're dealing with about 700 candidates. And a letter was sent to, it was a short election, short time, and not a lot of time to get this out. But the questionnaire was sent to the leaders and presidents of every political party and asked to pass it on to their candidates in every riding. So we're looking at 700 odd people who are there potentially that should answer, and 4 candidates and across the whole province responded to the questionnaire. Now, one might say, well, the questionnaire obviously was too complicated, there was some issues, and you can fault the way it was done. And I'm not going to defend that completely either, because that could well be the case. However, the fact that only 4 responded to more general questions about where they stand on big issues gives an indication of how remote our representatives have become from the people whom they are supposed to represent. It's a problem, and somehow we need to find a way that starts with principle, and perhaps one way to get that response is to have a proper set of questions, a clear set of questions that are not nonpartisan, they're not biased, that go to every candidate and that are pressed to every candidate by the constituents. And if that was done, we might be able to get some better interaction from people, and we would have a better idea of who it is we were actually voting for, what they stood for. I mean, certainly my own perspective, and maybe others have done this too. You go to all of the candidates in your riding and you look at their bios, and what do you find? You find a very little in there about what they stand for. You find, oh, I was a member of this, I was a member of that, I'm a member of that. Well, that doesn't tell you what they really stand for. And if they're going to represent us, we need to be able to choose candidates whom we value. So there needs to be a way to do that. And I think the clearly consistent with our approach in the Our Principles, take it back to the people. People have to get involved. People have to make the requests. And that's why governments are there to serve us, to protect and serve us. They're not there to tell us what to do. And they're certainly not there to dupe us by telling us, well, I'm for everything good, just vote for me, unite behind me, and I'll do the right things for you. I'll force you to do it. That's not a way to have a representative democracy. We need to reseize this, and it's the principles that we have to use as a basis for pushing for that.
I agree with you, Charles. And one of the things that I've come across when we talk about the principles and who we're electing and who are the people, the candidates running and all the different, whether it's federal, provincial, or municipal, when we talk about federal and provincial, we know what party they're affiliated with, that particular candidate. So we have a basic idea because we vote for the party. We don't really vote for the individual. But in municipal politics, we feel that we vote for the individual because they don't really align themselves with a party. But in actual fact, many municipal candidates are aligned with a political party, and they have a political agenda. But many people don't understand that part of it, that these candidates do align themselves with different party groups. And that should be brought out right in those candidacy meetings that are open, and it should be transparent. But for whatever reason, our system of government doesn't show that. And that, I think, would really help if we knew where that person's thoughts are, or where his affiliations are all about going forward. But that's just the way it is.
You need to follow the money.
Well,
you need to follow the money, and I think it should be a standard rule that every individual who wants to serve the people should have a forensic audit done on their finances annually, if nothing more. But you need to follow the money.
Jack, the challenge with that is, and I've done that already, you're only allowed, so in municipal politics, you're allowed $1,500 per person to give to a candidate. Well, here's the problem. A company it could be owned by an individual, or it could be someone who works for that company of an individual, gets the money from the company, gives it to the candidate. And
I'm not talking about donations to the candidate. I'm talking about the money that is spent by them when they're in office. It's like a Doge, like the Doge effect. And I got a feeling we're worse shape in the U.S.
Yeah,
there's a lot of money. In 1976, I ran a business in Ottawa, and I had somebody come to me because they were bringing in, and what he said to me was, he said, "You want to make a lot of money fast?" And I said, "Well, what's up?" And he said, "We're going to buy some plastic injection molding machines, and we're going to inject and make rulers and all kinds of school stuff for the schools, especially with the all metric system stuff." And so they had inside information on the metric, the whole metric thing, like that insider trader thing. If you want to, it's all over Ottawa. It's throughout this country. There's politicians like I'm from Cape Breton, and seriously, Alan McCacken and that group down there, when they were liberals, and everybody made a lot of money, a ton of money when they were in office, and they're not transparent.
Do you think Kevin O'Leary's interested in making money when he goes down to Mar-a-Lago with Danielle Smith?
Sure,
of course,
sure he does.
I think so.
It'd be silly. No, but he's not. Is he spending our money? He's not spending my money.
He was down there sort of representing Canada.
He's the business side of it, and Trump threw the stimulant in there and talked about the 51st state and Governor Trudeau and all that stuff, and exposed Trudeau for being a moron he is. And O'Leary, he jumped in there with the idea of the 51st state, because he's pissed too at what Canada's going through. A lot of people are. And Canada would ever become the 51st state of the United States. It's just not going to happen.
What's Kevin O'Leary's interest in all this, do you think? On the business side?
I don't know if maybe he's got a moral interest in it, and a principled interest in helping this country get back on track. Maybe
so you don't think that his interest in building a $14 billion oil refinery has anything to do with it on the U.S. side?
What's wrong with that? If it puts money into Canada, what's wrong with that?
Well, this is a U.S. oil refinery that he wants to build.
Do you know, driving a truck, I used to fuel up on the other side of the Sarnia on the U.S. side, and that our fuel in Canada was refined and shipped across the border, and I could buy it cheaper on the other side.
Sure, but aren't we supposed to be focusing on trying to build pipelines across Canada? And isn't this the issue that's fueling the separatist movement in Alberta? And isn't
I worked in the pipeline industry for 4 years. I built pipe across this country, and it was there's so much corruption, it's not even funny. We left machinery running down in Niagara. So we left machinery sitting there for 5 years that was getting paid 24 hours a day.
Yeah, I'm just wondering why a business guy who also has an interest in building a multi-billion-dollar artificial intelligence tech center in Alberta, is down in Mar-a-Lago with the Premier of Alberta after stating in public that he wants to build a $14 billion oil refinery on the U.S. side. And I'm also seeing direct connections of U.S. influence into Alberta with big money fueling the separatist movement through organizations like Wexit and other prominent, shall we say, separatist political figures. It's very concerning to me. In addition to that, have you ever heard of General Paul Vallely?
No,
I have
go ahead and fill me in.
So this is a general. Do you know who Norm Traversy is?
Nope.
Okay. See, this is the thing. Earlier we were talking about the convoy, and Jack, in the beginning and for a long time, I was always of the mind that just most peaceful convoy ever, right? But over time, I'm seeing that there are many layers to this, and there were some people in there, as I think you are probably aware, that were not, shall we say, acting in good faith,
Up and up.
right?
Yeah.
Some people. Well, here's a question. This is about sovereignty. It's about freedom. It's about respecting the borders of other countries. General Paul Vallely was on this program just a couple of weeks ago, and the good general. Let me just bring this caller in here.
Where does he get his title, general?
He's a retired U.S. Major General in the U.S. Army. His area of expertise is actually in psychological operations, information warfare primarily. He's retired now. He's in his 80s, but he seems to be working in some sort of a contractual. He seems to have a contracting company. He's directly connected to Mr. Trump, advises Donald Trump, provides intelligence for Donald Trump. If you go to their website, which is Stand Up America, I believe, something like that. I'd have to find the website for you. It states right on their website that they have intelligence gathering operations in countries around the world, including Canada. Norm Traversy, who was at the convoy and says that he was one of the organizers, at least one of the cells of operation at the convoy. It's true. And they had their own little operation. Well, the general was operating from his home base in Montana. And this is where I get really concerned, because he was on my show. He was talking about this. He's been talking about it on other podcasts. It's kind of coming out that when he's just talking about it openly now, that during the convoy, he was in direct communication with Norm Traversy, with Pat King, advising where to send trucks, giving them strategic advice from his home base in Montana, and then relaying information directly back to Donald Trump. And
he did a lousy job,
pardon me?
He did a lousy job.
But here, let me finish. These efforts continue even today. And they continue, and he's even just recently signed documents, which I have in my possession. I have copies of them, which I've shown on this program, where they're essentially calling for the overthrow of the government. So you see, when I begin to peel the layers of the onion back, and you're totally not aware of it, I'm aware of it now. I'm seeing that there's multiple views on this, and this also ties back to that night, to the 2019 United We Roll convoy, which was out of Alberta. Same groups of people that were involved in sort of the core group coming from Alberta in 2022 for the Freedom Convoy. Their motives were not about the mandates. Their motives were all about the oil industry and about separatism. And when I'm seeing like, this is a big concern to me, because this all goes into the 51st state stuff. I've got the good general on the screen right here. I can bring him up. Go ahead, Charles.
If you look at any organization that has any power, you will find that people who want to abuse the power have a huge incentive to get involved. And so with respect to the convoy, the people who were standing on bridges were not connected to Donald Trump.
No, there were not. But my
There's
point
Trump's
is
name
that we're
again.
sitting here tonight and we're talking about the 51st state issue. We're talking about Donald Trump and how everybody's paranoid. And I was very much a Trump guy. Especially during the first administration. But as I keep digging and I keep finding things out, I'm very alarmed about the assault on our sovereignty. I'm concerned. You see, guys, if you've got a major general, and he's not the only one. He's also connected to General McInerney. He's connected directly to General Flynn, who's also, they appear on some of these podcasts together, and they're openly talking about what they're going to do here. And in addition to that, General Vallely wrote, he created a plan called Operation Sinaloa, which they also talk about openly, referring to what they want to do in attacking using the military, Mexico. And what we're seeing with the amassing of troops really runs very much in parallel with what he's been talking about on Operation Sinaloa. It's not the exact plan, but he still advises Donald Trump today. So this is an international incident. It raises serious questions about our sovereignty, international law. It's, in my view, we're talking about possible criminal things. I'm not saying that the general has broken any laws, but certainly he's doing discredit. It's a dishonor to his service. It's an ethical breach. And I'll play this clip.
Just a sec, Gerald. Having been in Ottawa, in New York, in the headquarters, and going out every night on the street, Wellington, going to Coventry, going to 88 where we had the other trucks. And going all around, I can tell you now, none of those people had any influence in there at all. And if they did the worst job and the lousiest job they could have done. And Pat King got in all kinds of trouble. Pat King got in all kinds of trouble. These people, this is after the fact BS as far as I'm concerned, because I was there.
Yeah, well, I know, Jack. I know, and on this level and on that level, I totally get it. But I'm just telling you. And I keep running into this over and over again. This is, don't blame me. They're the ones talking about it.
They're the ones. They didn't do a very good job when everybody's bank accounts got frozen. And Pat King and Pat
Here's
King
the general.
got,
he's let him lay it out.
A long time. He's dug up a lot of stuff, and he feeds me stuff, and
He's talking about
a lot of it.
Traversy.
I don't know.
I don't really.
This?
This is the general.
Is that the general?
I would like to talk to you about something tonight that maybe you can help me with, but I don't really want. I'm a little reluctant because it's kind of putting you on the spot.
Yeah.
But I think it's important.
Okay.
And would it be okay if I did this?
Well,
you don't know because you don't know what it is I'm going to do.
He's not going to know until you ask.
I kind of want to keep people safe. And I'll tell you, I'm going to lay it out for you. Your name does come up a lot. And before we came on tonight, somebody sent me a recording. And I know that you've been involved in the freedom movement to some degree, and you were, talking to people during the Freedom Convoy, and I totally understand. But since then, of course, you've been on podcasts, and within the community and certain portions of the community, people talk about you. They kind of put you up on a pedestal, and they think that you have a lot of power. I think maybe some of these people are a little delusional, frankly, and maybe they don't have a grasp of reality.
Yeah.
But to them, it is very real, General, and this is really concerning to me because they keep trying to recreate the convoy over and over again. And you're quite right. Some people do want the government gone. And they keep doing things that I think kind of put public safety in jeopardy at times. So last month, there was a group of people who were trying to do this again. And they were communicating on a secure radio channel. And somebody sent me a copy of the recording. And in this recording, your name came up. And they talk about a number of things. They were heading to Ottawa, to Parliament, to in these. This is what they were asserting. I won't play the whole recording tonight, but they were going there to overthrow the government in their minds. Okay, so I'm going to play this little clip for you just to show you the seriousness of this, to show you how serious they are about it, and then I'll maybe get you to comment on this, and maybe we can bring the temperature down a little bit after I play this for you.
And is this General, is General Paul Valieri is involved?
Yes.
Okay. So it means that there's going to be an armed movement at the end of it.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay.
But you're not supposed to know that.
Okay.
You're very not supposed to do it to know that.
So they keep setting up camps, or so I'm apparently, around Ottawa. They keep going back. In this particular case, the authorities became aware, as I understand it, and they kind of blocked access, and the thing fizzled out again. There was a period at one point about a year ago, I think it is now, where police had to shut down downtown Toronto around the Ontario legislature because this kind of stuff was going on. And they have some of these people, and I hate to even talk about it, but my priority here, my mandate is to serve the public, to tell the truth, and to keep people safe. And when I hear people talking like this, I get very concerned.
Those like you.
Oh, here, hang on.
I don't know if you have another solution.
Oh, here.
Okay, so you guys are going there the 27th. You'll be the savior of so-called Canada, standing your ground and thinking that you can have some kind of power. Actually, if you could tell me what's the real goal, I might be able to understand, but all of you is going to Ottawa on the 27th to claim what are the demands? Like, what do you guys want? That's what I'm trying to understand.
My goal is remove Zionists.
So when he says Zionists, what he's really talking about here, in my estimation, is to go to Ottawa and remove the members of Parliament who he sees as Zionists. That's really where they're going with this whole conversation, and he elaborates on it here.
I don't know if you have another solution, but...
Yes, I have one solution, but you will not like it.
What is it? It's an easy one, but it's not a good one. It's not a good mind.
That's need to kill Zionists.
No. It's not a good mind.
Yes, we need to kill Zionists because Zionists is the cancer of humanities.
And then the plan goes on beyond that, and I keep hearing this over and over again.
That's not me. You notice he had an accent.
I totally get it.
Yeah.
But the problem here, General, is that they think it is you.
I don't care.
Well, I care, and I think you could do us all a service here tonight. What would you like to say to them? I mean, just tell these people it's not you, I guess.
The only thing I've said is Canada needs a new, strong government. That's all I've ever said.
I got a little beyond that, but...
And they do. They need new leadership.
I agree with you. I think we do need a new government, and
that's the right of the Canadian people to do it.
Sure. So, I mean, can you help me out here? And
no, because it wasn't me. I didn't say that.
Well, I know, but you tell these people that that's not what you want them to do. I guess
did.
Is what I'm asking you to do.
I didn't say that. The last thing I would do is try to get another government to have a coup and revolution. I don't use those words. Relative. I do it in some articles. Maybe you'd like to see what's happening in different parts of the world. But I've always said it's up to the Canadians. If you want a new government, you've got to do it. And there's ways to do it.
Sure. I mean, I think that, part of the confusion here is that, during the convoy, you're down in Montana, but you're talking to Norm and providing advice during probably the biggest anti-government protest in Canadian history. You have a background in the military. You are a general. You're connected to the government. You're viewed by many people as an authority figure, a very credible person. But you're from the United States,
Right.
so in the view of some, I would say, that is viewed through a lens of possible foreign influence.
Well, that's what I did in Syria.
Right.
That's what I did in Syria.
Right. And while, it's illegal for, white hat information warfare to take place on U.S. soil, not so in Canada. So it can be interpreted in that way. And certainly our government here at that time did interpret it that way for reasons that are still a little bit beyond me, even though I did read a lot of the intelligence information that was released to the public through the the public hearings that took place after the convoy and the invocation of the Emergencies Act. I did read a lot of the material, but the government, and they said this publicly, they found the intelligence sources here were of the opinion, based on the information they had, that at the core of this, there was an element there that was foreign influenced and wanted to overthrow the government. And then these things keep happening over and over and over again. And frankly, your name comes up from time to time. And I for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is that you're just out there on social media and these old posts talking about Q, and these people are part of the Q movement, I would say. So in their minds, that's the reality. But I know that you're an honorable man, and I don't get the sense that this is anything that you want people to do.
No, I've been through too many things in many foreign countries, from Germany and the height of the Soviet-American feud that was going on in the early 60s, to Vietnam, Central and South America, drug enforcement and all that. So I've been in a lot of things in special operations.
PSYOPs.
And when General McInerney and I formed the Stand Up America Foundation, it was based on lies that we found out that Hillary Clinton did regarding Benghazi. And we started getting into a lot of things at that point in time. And I was with Fox News, for 8 years.
Yeah.
I was their senior guy. I was hired by Roger Ailes 1 week after 9/11. So, and from that time, you get a lot of television, radio, and a lot of things. And people interpret things a little differently sometimes. I try to be straight with my words and real about them, because I have nothing to hide.
Yeah, because he said that he's in his 80s now, so what are they going to do to him?
I like him.
What's that?
I like him.
You like him?
I think he's straight up and honest.
Except Jack.
I know the voice that was there saying he wanted to, go kill Zionists and stuff. He's a wacko right from the. I mean, he's the Ottawa to truck stop. They're the ones that Tom Razzo and the leadership in here had to deal with. It was that nutcase. He's a complete nutcase.
But they're there, and they're being motivated and directed by.
No, they're all full of bullshit. They're like, even the general said that wasn't him on the phone call.
No, I know that.
They imagine this. They imagine this in their heads.
Oh, but it's more than imagining, Jack. And even though he's saying he's not involved, I have documents, because he's kind of in that camp, and he's not kind of, he is, and he's signed these documents calling for the overthrow of the government. This is an actual general, and he is connected to Trump. He is connected to McInerney. He is connected to Flynn.
The overthrow of the government, the overthrow of Canadian government.
Yeah.
But back when we worked on computers when they first came out, we used to build what was called flow charts, and if then there, all that stuff. And I would love to do an actual flow chart on this and track it down and put all the names and numbers and connections. Because I think a lot of it, I think you're going to find is just a hype. It's a psyop.
There you go.
Charles
PSYOP.
has got it. Charles
Yeah,
got his hand
in fact, General Vallely wrote the book on PSYOPs. He wrote a plan called the entire title escapes me, but
it was to discredit the convoy.
What's that? No, this was before the convoy.
It was to discredit. Yeah, well, a lot of
that's
them.
And that's not my intent here. That's not my intention. What I'm illustrating here is that this whole 51st state stuff, this stuff with Donald Trump, all these things going on right now, this has been in the works for a long time, for many, 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 many years, and it's directly connected to Donald Trump, to MAGA, to what's going on right now, and the oil industry, and all of these things connect, and at the core of the Freedom Convoy was this other element that goes back to the previous convoy, which was a couple of years prior in 2019, the United We Rule convoy, and it's a lot of the same people, and it just keeps happening over and over again. I'm not suggesting that the Freedom Convoy wasn't what it was, because it was, as you've described it, but there's also that element in the middle of it, and it's a problem. It's an international incident. Go ahead, Charles.
You're muted, Charles.
Yeah, you're muted.
Foreign interference happens in multiple ways, and certainly any big movement like the convoy, people are going to try to take it over. They may have some influence, they may not. But what you also have is interference that occurs, for example, in the way that elections are manipulated by foreign governments. And while we had an inquiry on this, I think the results of that inquiry are highly suspect in terms, I don't think they get into the issue of the extent to which our country and its elections are manipulated by outside.
Are you talking about the POAC after the convoy, that inquiry?
No, I'm speaking of the inquiry that was looking at the Chinese interference.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
So if we look at this, we know that happens. We know foreign countries are going to do that. We know individuals are going to do it. But we find interference in other ways too. We find interference that occurs from the Suzuki Foundation, that they find a way into government to cause influence, to push the policies that they want. We find that vice presidents of major companies in Canada get a job in a policy department in federal or provincial government.
Those are citizens. David Suzuki is a Canadian. General Vallely is a U.S. general.
Well, I don't want to focus simply on whether Trump is actually trying to take over and destroy Canada.
Well, that's the core issue today. That's what's disrupting everything. That's what's throwing the stock markets topsy-turvy. That's what's tanking Bitcoin one day and spiking it the next. While the whales sell and buy and get wealthy through the huge swings in the markets.
Listen, you're right. There are things that happen there that are not that are deeply troubling, and there are legitimate questions.
Yes.
But the question really is, how can people regain control of their governments, and how do we do that?
The first thing we have to do is not just secure our borders, but secure our elections and secure our political process and secure it from foreign influence and integration, right? And why are we so concerned? Why is everybody concerned about China but not about what's going on the U.S. side? Because we're asleep at the switch.
Many are.
I would say.
I think many are now. So
yeah,
and undoubtedly it was not managed as it should have been. But what I would say is, if we look at how our policies are developed, the influence of lobby groups is huge in developing policies. The role of bureaucrats in developing policies, writing legislation, preparing the regulations is massive.
Exactly.
And the ability to control how that gets done is by outside interests is very large. And so all of that is moving away from the core idea that governments are there to serve the people.
Right.
So whether they're serving a foreign government, whether they're serving some corporate interest or some lobby group,
right,
that's different than serving the people, and
so,
that's why the principles matter.
Right.
So are we going to fix all of this? It would be nice if we would say we would.
Mm-hmm.
But what has happened historically is you get the principles somewhat understood. Governments kind of commit to them, and they implement them, and then someone comes along and says, well, I'm doing it differently, or people come in and they run the institution in a way that serves them rather than serving the job, the people that it's supposed to serve.
Yeah.
And so the question is, how do you get back towards doing it right? And by right, I mean in a principled fashion. There are two approaches. One is violent, and the other is by understanding and pressure and change that reduces
let me ask
violence.
you this, Charles. Do you think that Donald Trump is in alignment with the principles when he's publicly stating that he's holding an economic gun to our head and using economic force to get us to, I guess, make a decision on whether we want to be the 51st state?
Well, open, transparent, and accountable is something that I think fits within the principles really well. Governments are there to serve the people, and changing your story or going after other countries, reneging on commitments to Ukraine from 1994, making comments that are deprecating of our leader, no matter what we may think of our leader, and maybe he needs to be criticized. But
that's what I'm here to do as a journalist.
But I would say, do I really think that he is the kind of guy that I would like to negotiate with? I think the person who has tried hardest to work with him to try to figure it out, Jack mentioned it earlier, was Danielle Smith. And if you see Danielle Smith's comments in the last few days, she hasn't gone on the attack and called him an enemy. She hasn't gone after him with ad hominem remarks.
Regardless of all of that, he's been attacking us, and he's been insulting a lot of people.
He has.
And
our
country is under attack. It's pretty clear to me that we are now engaged in some sort of warfare. Some sort of hybrid warfare with him. He's using economic force, the same tools that he's using against the enemies of the United States. He's now turned on us. And so when I see General Vallely, a prominent media figure on Fox News, also appearing regularly on RT, and still directing people, and he's on podcasts, and he's on calls, and he's sharing this is of extreme concern to me, because this is the foreign influence. This is the foreign infiltration, and people don't seem to be as concerned about it just because it's coming from the U.S. side. But in fact, the greatest existential threat to our country, as we sit here tonight, is not from China. It's not even really from Russia. It's from Donald J. Trump. And
you may well be right, and I won't dispute that. But if you look at where we stand, I mean, and look at Trump. I mean, you see comments made that are, I think, fairly reasonable. That what he's doing, he looks like he's closer. He's even in his statements. Zelensky, I'll go to Ukraine. Zelensky said he wants a durable peace, a just peace.
Sure.
And Trump's guy talking with Zelensky talks about a durable, just peace. Russia says they want a final settlement agreement. And Trump then comments, and he says he wants a final settlement agreement. So his words look a lot more like Russia's words than they do like Zelensky's words.
Yes.
And they don't look the same as his representative, who's negotiating with the Ukrainian people and will be there in Saudi Arabia. Mm-hmm. So when you look at this, you have to say, okay, what is this? And you look at Gaza. So I'll speak to Ukraine for a minute. So what does Trump say? With respect to Ukraine, he says, Russia has lost a lot of soldiers. They fought for this. I can understand what Russia's doing. Anyone would do what Russia's doing. They have a right to the land they've taken. I mean, he said those words, and he hasn't defended his former principles. So, and what does he say? Well, I want a deal, and what exactly deal does he want? So the deal that he's talking with Ukraine is, you give Russia 25% of your land, and give me 50% ownership of your minerals and your oil and gas.
Right.
I mean, it looks like he's partitioning the country, he's dissolving the country, and he's divvying up the spoils.
Yeah.
You look at Israel, and what does he do in Israel? Well, Gaza's happened. And what does he say? Well, we'll help you get out of there, Hamas. And by the way, we're going to move all the Palestinian people out of Gaza.
Yeah.
And I'm going to take it over and have a great real estate development.
You're going to own it.
And
he's going to own Gaza.
So, and then if you come back to Canada,
and then in an incredible display of disrespect and some sickening, weird, twisted humor, dark, black humor. This is not funny. He releases that AI video of him sipping drinks in Trump Gaza with Netanyahu and showing all the resorts and everything. You know, I can't wait to buy my ticket to go on the water slide and have a round of golf on, Trump Gaza golf course.
Well, I didn't see that. So his methods are really highly shocking.
Bizarre.
Yeah, I agree with that. But if you mentioned earlier Bannon and Bannon's effective strategy. As I read what Bannon said, he said that Trump wants to stop funding the defense of Europe. He wants it to defend itself. He's going to pull off. He's basically written off Europe because it's gone DEI, woke, ESG, completely unresolvable. And we're going to make North America. We're going to defend the U.S. And what do we need? We need the Panama Canal, we need Canada, and we need Greenland. And because China and Russia are going to come at us from the north, they're developing this fleet. So you look at it and you say, well, okay, you see the questions being asked, is this really just a real estate speculator, a real estate broker who goes in and uses whatever power to overpower whatever he wants? Mm-hmm. The question is not an unreasonable question. And so the question then is, if that is what may be going on, have we prepared for that potential? No, we know we have not. How do we begin to deal with that potential? That we're in a new world in all respects. Mm-hmm. And is there a way to get pushback against it if that is happening, by dealing with the states, by dealing with Republicans who say, wait a minute, this is not what we really understood. This is a different Donald Trump than we had supported to clean up the mess that's in America. So, but we clearly, globalism is now no longer what it was, and so we're now looking at a new world. And I would say we in Canada are in a very disadvantaged position, because Europe might be able to, I don't know if it can, unite around Europe and find a defense of Europe and an economy in Europe that's not going to be subject to the American tariffs, cut U.S. off. Canada is going to have a hard time getting in.
You guys want to wake me up when you're done?
No, it's okay. Go ahead, Jack. I know you've got your hand up.
Well, it's very simple. We lost a caller earlier. I think we should have a thing that if a caller pops up, no matter what we're talking about,
I think it was
stop.
I think it was Laurie again. He can call back if he wants. He's been on 3 times now.
Yeah, so we can't identify who to call. I can't.
I saw the numbers. So. It's okay, but go ahead.
No, that's all I'm saying. I have a 5 a.m. wake up. I've got to swing propane up on the roof. It's after 10 o'clock. I think the Isabel from this whole thing, I mean, is and the gentleman too. Like, we got a couple of really good people here. I think something good, positive came out of this meeting.
I think so too. And I bring all this up because it's not really about the convoy. It's about what's going on right now, and it's about the ongoing problems being inflicted on our country by influential people like the general, who's doing it now.
It's good if it wakes Canadians up. We need to wake Canadians up so they put leaders in place who can deal with this.
I don't think
Right?
this is good at all. This is foreign.
No, but if it
this
wakes
is
Canadians
foreign
up,
interference.
if it wakes Canadians up to pay attention to who's representing them, I think it's important.
Sure. Okay.
Because apathy, complacency, and indifference.
Does this not concern you guys?
You're not listening to me.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'll shut up.
Okay,
Sorry.
what I'm telling you is that this calamity that's happening to us, whether it's coming from China, Russia, it doesn't matter where it comes from, is that it happens because Canadians are apathetic. They're not involved in the political, properly in the political thing.
Sure, I agree.
And so people are in here raping us left, right, and center for money. They're taking our land, they're taking our power. They're destroying us from the inside out, and from the outside in. And so, it's like a good earthquake across this country just might bring the country awake to say, hey, let's, neighbors start meeting neighbors and start talking. And that's why the principles are so important, is to get them into the country. In the meanwhile, this Trump derangement syndrome that's going on, and the Putin fear going on, and the whole Ukrainian money laundering thing, I don't give an ass's rip about any of it. What I care about is we need to get Canadians involved in the process so that we can do something about it. Right now, we can just complain. Because nobody's going to do it. Nobody's going to. No, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to everybody. Nobody. We haven't got a system in place to deal with any of this.
But I think part of the main reason we're having this trouble right now with the United States is because the president doesn't align at all with these principles. At all. He doesn't respect.
I don't live in the U.S.
But no, we live here, and he doesn't respect our border. He says it's an imaginary line. He doesn't respect Mexico because he's renaming the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America unilaterally without even talking to other countries. He's amassing troops on the Mexican border. He's holding an economic gun to our heads, his greatest ally and friend in the world.
But you just rose a good question. You said that he doesn't align with the principles.
Yeah.
Do our leaders align with the principles?
Well, we can talk about that, but those are two. I'm talking about the guy who's threatening our country right now, and
if
you see the foreign interference as a result.
If we had leaders in this country who align with the principles.
This is victim blaming.
No, I'm saying if we had leaders in this country who align with the principles, and a constituency, like citizens in this country involved in the process, that what Donald Trump is doing wouldn't bother us at all. We would deal with it as a unified country across the like Danielle Smith. We would deal with this as a unified country. But our country's fractured. The West is talking about breaking up.
The United States is pretty darn fractured itself in a lot of ways, very divided. So, I don't think Donald Trump is in any position to preach to us.
No, but I'm just saying we don't have principled leaders in this country.
Well, I think that overall, when you look at I think our government adheres to the principles a lot more than he does, because at least we respect the sovereignty of other nations. Who else? Did you want to say something, John?
I think what we're doing is we're going over a lot of things that a lot of us know, a lot of us are new. Some of the things are credible. Some of them we really have to go back and source and get a better understanding of. Because like you say, Rick, there's a lot here to peel off. And what we're doing is we're taking all these big global things and try to squeeze them all into one thing. And I don't think you can do that. I think what Jack is saying, it has a lot of merit, that neither the U.S., China, Russia, or any of these elitists have principles. They have policies because they're driving those policies for their best interest, no matter what it is, whether it's the general, whether it's Elon Musk, or whether it's, the French president. They all have their own policies. What I truly believe that none of them, and we the people, are to blame for this. If we don't have some sort of a basic starting point, and that's what the principles are all about. You can't judge, you can't point the thing to anyone. We can go around and talk about Trump and talk about this and talk about that, but that isn't going to get us anywhere. What is going to get us somewhere is if we all are on the same page. And that's what this whole thing about the principles is about. Let's get everybody on the same page so we all understand who we are, what we're doing, the values of what government is supposed to do, what citizens are supposed to do, and so forth. That's what I think. We can talk about Trump and, you know, Danielle Smith and Quebec and this and that and all these other all night long, but that's not going to make the answers.
No.
That's where I come from.
If I could pick up on both of these, I think Jack is really saying that in our response to Trump, whatever he may be doing or not doing, do we need leaders who respond in a principled manner? And I will a principled response in the very difficult times we're in? What will it mean for Canada? And I think we're headed for tough times, from what I can see.
Yeah.
And if we can have a response that's based on principle, that persons matter and that governments have a duty to serve, rather than on ideologies. And if we look at Carney, he talked about conservatives having an ideology. Well, there's very clearly an ideology that has been pushed by those who are linked with the World Economic Forum, the ESG, DEI. And I don't think that's vanished, and it hasn't disappeared in the more general words that Carney was putting forward. So the question is his response going to be ideological based on some policy directions,
right,
or is it going to be a response based on principles? I have a fear with Carney it's going to be far more ideological.
Yeah.
And so if I look at Poilievre, what I would say is there's a bigger chance that it'll be closer to principles than to ideology.
I agree.
And so how do we get that message across? And how do Canadians know what will really happen? It requires asking questions of the politicians. And John observed earlier that, well, we vote for the party rather than for the individual, and that tends to be how most people vote. But the reality is we should be voting for the constituent who's there, the representative of the constituents, who's there to represent the constituents, not the party. And we've lost that. So if we look at representation and the principles basically say that they are there to protect and serve, not to impose. And so we see the duplicity. And is there some duplicity in what Poilievre is doing? Probably there is. I mean, that's the way our political parties have gone. So getting a principled response is what matters. From my observation of it, I am very skeptical that the Liberals have changed from their ideological push. Do I think Poilievre is pushing in certain directions I don't like, that are unprincipled? Yes, I do. But I think less than with the Liberals right now. And if I look at the Ontario election from a personal perspective, of the three main parties, I don't think any of them were operating on a principled basis. They were operating on a purely political, partisan basis. So what matters is principles. And can we get our political parties and our representatives, more importantly, to represent us and to
Only one
uphold
way.
the principles?
Only one way, Bruce. Party, critical mass. You have to have the numbers. We have to. I don't like using the word educate because communists use that for years. We need to inform the everyday average Canadian, the working Joe and all that. We need to inform them of the criteria that leaders should meet, and then let them make up their own mind.
Well, I would not even say inform. What we do is we put out a set of principles that have this long history in the West, and we say, do you buy into this? If you do, it's up to you to act on them. And I think personally that, and having talked to some very young persons about this, that they recognize principles, and they would rather see a government of principle rather than a government of policy or ideological persuasion. So how do we get them to embrace, to talk about, and to coalesce around a set of principles that we can all agree upon? That's what matters.
Grok told us the hashtag. Remember hashtag OurPrinciples? Remember all the different things that Grok give us? The whole list of it, including the hashtag and all the different ways to get it out to the young people. So we need
Just
to
by the
do
way, somebody did a look about Trump on Grok, and they asked Grok, What's the evidence that Trump is he or is he not a Russian agent? And Grok's response was rather interesting. He said, well, we've looked at all this. It was fairly long, the response, but it said, it looks like it's somewhere that he is, the potential of him being there is between 75% and 85%, and probably leading to the high end. And so that's Grok. So looking at all the evidence, Grok comes to that leaning. Are there risks that we face? I think there are. I think we in Canada, if we're to get through this, the chance of having the country not fall apart and fight and become massively divided is greater if we can unite around principles. And I think the principles that are set out in OurPrinciples.ca, they have stood the test of time. And that's where I think we should focus, getting people to talk about them and push them.
Yeah, so I'll put the website back up here for you guys. And maybe if we get people to focus on the basics, on the founding principles of our nation and Western society, maybe then we will have a fighting chance against Agent Krasnov, Mr. Trump in the White House.
Or General whomever.
Right, but at least with the general, I'm able to produce an actual breathing, warm human body who talks openly about it. That's a 3-hour interview with him, by the way, for anybody that wants to go and watch that. And then there's a subsequent follow-up broadcast about it as well. And I just, it's a bigger thing.
Interesting.
Yeah. Oh, hang on. This isn't actually, I went to the wrong website. Let me.
Oh, that's the right website.
That's the right one.
Oh,
You're
is it?
under
Okay, there you go.
supporters.
Yeah.
You're under the title supporters.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. Let me go. I have to find there it is. No, that's flag officers for America. Yeah. Let me just, there we go. Now I've got it. Okay, I'll go to the home page. And the website address is OurPrinciples.ca, correct?
That's it.
Yeah, that's right. Sometimes they have to put in www for some reason.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they do, depending on what they're using for a operating system.
Yeah. And I'll just go around the horn for a couple of for a quick final thought from all of you guys as we wrap up tonight.
Who's starting? Charles, you're first in the lineup.
Oh, sorry about that. Let me come back here so that I can see where I am again. I think it's been an interesting discussion. We're in obviously a new world, and what's happening in the U.S. makes this such a profoundly new world where commitments and agreements and understandings that we had and maybe exploited by not spending, for example, our NATO money, not dealing adequately with money laundering, not dealing adequately with drugs, and a whole bunch of policies need to be addressed. But it's a new world, and we need to find a way through this new world. It's not going to be easy. Alternatives in terms of getting our other markets, we have oceans to get to. And from Alberta, we've got long distances where things would have to be shipped, and we don't have the mechanisms to do it.
Yeah.
And putting pipelines across Canada is not easy. It takes a massive amount of time. How we would adjust to this and whether we can quickly enough, I don't know. But we need a leader who is, and a government that puts Canadians first and that will move us forward, hopefully on a principled basis. Yes, there's some pragmatism. Yes, there's some policy decisions. Yes, there will be difficulties. But if principle drives that, then there's a chance of maintaining unity rather than division. And that's what I would like to see.
Okay. John?
I enjoyed the evening. I liked the people who asked the questions. I hope they got something out of it because the more we can educate people in understanding what the principles are all about and what we need to focus on, the easier and the better it'll be for everyone. One of these things that what's happened so far with this crisis, with the tariffs and so forth, in a way it's brought Canadians, it's gotten people to think about issues. And the more we can start thinking about these issues, the better it'll be. But we, like Charles says, we need a leader. We need someone who's going to stand up for Canadians, not for big business or elitists or whatever, but for every Canadian out there. And the more podcasts like yours, Rick, that talk about these things, the more people can actually understand them and get involved. Because I hear it all the time. Oh, there's something wrong. Something's not right. There's something out there, this and that. But the more we can help educate them, the more they are going to get to understand what's going on out there. So overall, I thought it was a good night. And who knows, maybe we have made a bit of a difference.
Okay, and Jack, I hope you didn't take my stuff with the general the wrong way. In my view, what was going on there was this court, and it's like I see them as people who are trying to hijack and exploit the convoy in their own way for their own reasons.
Big time.
And I really disagree with him trying to influence our politics and in signing documents and even speaking about it and writing about it in his Substack articles, where he says that Canada is really already part of the United States. We just don't realize it. I'm paraphrasing, but that's really the gist of it. But I'll throw it over to you for your final thought tonight.
I totally agree, and having been in Ottawa and watching 7 or 8 people splinter off and become part of that Norm travesty crap, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's all the psyops on the general's part. Absolutely, I'm sure he was trying to influence things.
Yeah.
Fortunately for us, I don't think he took the core message away from the convoy, but they did cause there's a real rift in the leadership, right, and the people that were involved in it. The saying I said once before is that where two people think alike, one of you is not necessary, right? So I think the fact that we can sit here and have a difference of opinion and have this type of discussion and do so respectfully without hurt feelings and without, letting your emotions get overrode is the key to success in this country. I think these are the type of town hall meetings we need to have. We can't go do a Zoom virtually or go to a town hall in reality and walk in there and think, hey, you can't say this because it might upset somebody. No, see, because a lot of times when people say things that are, what would you call it, controversial,
Mm-hmm.
it helps other people. It stimulates the mind to think, maybe there's some truth to this, and they'll go do some research, and so it all pays off. I mean, these two here have changed my mind on a number of subjects where I had this viewpoint, and they would say, well, Jack, what about this? And I would go, you're right. I didn't always do it right at the moment. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time, but I think what we have here, I think this is a fantastic platform. And I think people watching and listening to this, would feel, regardless of their educational background or experiences, would feel comfortable in this conversation because they know they'd be respected. That's the key.
Well, I don't think we covered all the ground that we need to cover, so I hope you guys can come back and do this again. I know that the people calling in, I think, got a lot out of it. You can't see a lot of this chat stuff, but on some of the channels, because we're on many, very positive comments coming back overall. So I really appreciate you guys doing this tonight and for putting up with me. And the one thing that we, I think, can all agree on is that these principles are important, and it's something that can unite us and bind us all together. And that's what we need, I think, moving forward. Gentlemen, thank you so much. And I will see my Maverick family back here tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern, on the flip side. Thank you, everybody. Love you. See you then.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.